we'll make a... Good morning, everyone. Good morning, councillors, and good morning to our guests. It's good to see you here today. Well, we're looking forward to a number of really exciting updates from our community partners today, so welcome. I have apologies from Councillor Yong for, and also Councillor O'Leary for lateness. Councillor Yong for absence, Councillor O'Leary for lateness. I don't think there are any others. Okay, and from Councillor Mallett for an early departure. Thank you. This confirmation of the agenda, I haven't had any reason to change the agenda, so if I can have someone move, Councillor Casson, Councillor Henry, all in favour, opposed, carried. Are there any declarations of interest? You might put it now if you want to, Jeff. It's just a conflict of interest if you want to. Yeah, look, it's just in regard to the, let me find it, the Events Sponsorship Fund. I just wanted to flag that in regards to hockey, I have some involvement, not in any formal way, not in any committees or anything, but as a hockey dad more than anything, and cheerleader. But I just thought I should at least put that out there. Is that a vision? Okay, thank you very much. So that be noted. Moved by Councillor Henry, seconded Councillor Casson. All in favour say aye. Yep, fine. Spoken about hockey a few times in recent debates and in regards to roundabouts and things, and I am just sort of heavily involved, but not in any formal way. So I just wanted to check whether or not that was something that should be. So it's probably not, but at the same time, it's useful to note these things, and it's really in the councillors' discretion as to whether they see they've got a conflict of interest. So, you know, if that's what you feel comfortable doing, Councillor Taylor, well done for putting it ahead. So, thank you.
Chair, could I also just disclose an interest that that I am a resident near where potentially one of the new parks are going in Flagstaff?
Yeah, that's fine. Would that be noted? Thank you very much. So now we're up to the public forum, and I do believe we've got two people to speak at the public forum. The first one is Malcolm. There's one. We haven't got this going. Okay, so I think we've got brass band. Is that right? Good morning. Hamilton Brass. I used to play lovely music in the park where I lived a long time ago. Thanks. Cheers.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Malcolm Barr and I represent the Hamilton Citizens Band. We have applied for event sponsorship for the 2019 New Zealand Brass Band Championships. I'll just give you some background information on our band. It's unclear exactly when the Hamilton Band began, but we do have a photo of a band in our band room from 1931, so it must have been some years before that. Today we have three bands with about 80 players, ranging in age from 8 to 80 years old, and our flagship band has just been promoted into the A grade section for competing. The New Zealand National Contest is the oldest national brass band contest in the world, with the first contest in April 1880 down south. It's held annually and the host city is chosen through a competitive process. We went through that process last year, and in October we were awarded the 2019 contest. The last time Hamilton held the contest was in 1979, 1 month before I was born, so it will be 40 years and 2 months between drinks for the city. The event is held over 5 days in the July school holidays. The first 2 days are solo and small group events, and then there are 3 days of band events. During the 5 days, there are 4 flagship events to attract Hamiltonians to the contest, 2 evening solo competitions with the best in the country performing, and on the Sunday afternoon, the finale event, which is the 4 bands competing in a concert format for a Band of the Year title. The main one to attract people is our Street March or Parade of Bands, which is held during the lunchtime on the Friday, and we attract a large crowd. We do that in the CBD. We have a couple of venues scoped out, and we've had some initial contact with council staff looking at the logistics of that, and we'll certainly be needing some help with street management. The solo events and the main band events are all being held in the Claudelands Event Centre. We saw this as a major drawcard in our application, and I believe this is what pushed us over the line ahead of a North Shore application. That venue is pretty unique in the fact that we can host all of our events, including 5 solo rooms in one go in one building. And often we go around the country to these national contests, and you have to traipse across the city to see the events that are happening at similar times. And so we're quite excited to be showing off that venue around the country. We anticipate there will be about 1,500 visitors to the city for the event, and they'll stay on average 4 nights across hotels, motels and some in school boarding houses. The event is also live streamed on the internet, and in recent years we've had over 7,000 unique viewers from 20 countries, about 60% from New Zealand, 30% from Australia and the remainder from around the world. In terms of things for the city, the benefits that we're looking at for the street march and the parade of bands, we like to involve the council. This happens in the other cities as well, so we ask the mayor or the deputy mayor to be on the saluting dais as a VIP to be saluted. We promote the city leading up to the competition at the contest, which will be held in Blenheim next year. We will have essentially a trade stand where we'll be showing what's going to be happening here. We have lots of documentation and paperwork, and we wear t-shirts and all of that, and we'll have the city logo on it. In all of our presentations and public announcements, there will be Hamilton City Council logos. And then on the live streaming, between each band there's about an 8-minute dead time, and during that time we'll be able to show a promotional video of the city, and throughout bands playing we'll be able to have the Hamilton logo there, so that's going out to those 7,000 people. So that's basically a summary of the event and the history. Any questions?
Thank you. It sounds awesome. I'm quite excited about that. I grew up on brass bands. I think I was telling your colleague when I was raised in Portsmouth, we used to listen to the brass bands, the Army, Navy, etc. I'll just see if there's anybody. Sorry, I'm just going to get to the discussion bit. Okay, first up is Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Paula. Malcolm, thank you for coming today, and it brings back memories for me because in 1979 I was a 13-year-old who took part in the competition as a tenor horn player in the mighty auxiliary band. So great to see you here. Is it correct that your senior band has won the national championships?
That's right. We've won the B grade the last 2 years.
Right.
So
congratulations.
Into the A grade. Thank
you.
So
Now it's up into the A grade.
That's right.
Right. That's all I had to say. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bunting.
Thank you, Chair. I've only got 2 questions. One, if the Mayor's going to be an honoured guest in that, can you please make sure he wears one of those big funny hats, if it's okay, and take photos. But secondly, thank you for all your, it looks like you've gone into a really cool commercial model in recognising the city. Thank you for that. The money that you've applied for, what will that be used for?
So there's lots of costs involved in obviously venue hire. We bring adjudicators out normally from the UK. We have lots of costs around street management for the street parade. Our budget is basically for around about an $83,000 income, and around about $60,000 of spending to put the contest on, and we're required from that surplus to provide at a minimum of $15,000 back to the National Association, as it's their main way of funding all of the initiatives that they have throughout the year.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, and I understood from my earlier conversations that we will be working closely around a traffic plan. It's most important because you've got to go down wide routes that have so many right turns and...
Yeah, we need one left turn, one right turn, and we need wide enough to be able to put a band across it, and there's not a huge number of places in the city with the traffic islands that we can do that.
Yeah, so we have to look at a bit of a challenge for us councillors, because we would love them to be in our main public spaces, wouldn't we? Anyway,
absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Are you up there now? Councillor,
thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
Tell us about the bed nights and the potential. Obviously, an event of this effort I think is quite important in terms of the actual tourists and the number of visitors we're going to get. That'd be quite, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, so we're looking at, as I said, about 1,500 people coming to the city. Of that, about 860 will be participants and the rest spectators. Depending on whether we have one or two bands travel from Australia, every year there's at least one band comes. You know, basically when a band comes, you're looking at 60 people in total when you have the participants and the supporters, so either 60 or 120 from overseas. So 1,500 staying, I've estimated about 620 in hotels, 800 in motels, and about 100 staying at schools, and on average 4 nights.
That's excellent. And discuss with the mayor. I think the mayor has one of those Governor General type hats with feathers, so he can do the salute. He looks good in it actually, so you want to talk to him about that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. No more questions? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Which now brings us on to item 5, which is our, item 6, which is our Community and Services minutes from the last meeting. Are there any questions or concerns, changes to the minutes? No, there being none. Councillor Bunting moves. Seconder, please. Councillor Henry, all in favour. Opposed, carried. That brings us now to the Te Awa Great New Zealand River Ride, Sarah. So thank you very much for coming in. And it's been a little while since we've had heads up on, well, probably since we had our little cycle from the Hamilton Gardens. Yes, yes. Yeah. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity, guys. I've got about 10 minutes of a rapid-fire PowerPoint, but I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background. Can you guys hear me okay? A little bit of background as the overall picture of Te Awa for those of you that aren't as familiar with it, and then tell you about the opportunity that we have now with the connection between Cambridge and Hamilton. So, there we go. The whole vision of Te Awa is a 70k continuous multi-use path along the banks of the Waikato River, predominantly from Ngaruawahia through in and out of Hamilton, in and out of Cambridge, down to the start of the Waikato River Trails and Hora. That's our overall vision. It always has been from the start when we started in 2009. And that vision stays true now. So we started in 2009, a charitable trust, the Te Awa River Ride Charitable Trust, and since then we've built 22 kilometres. In conjunction with the existing river path network that's in Hamilton, we're over halfway of realising that 70-kilometre vision. We've opened 4 sections, very close to opening another one in October. We've planted well over 15,000 plants now of riparian planting. We've raised and spent $14 million. And we have an MOU signed by 3 councils with great support from regional council as well. And on average each year, I mean, those numbers could be inflated if we talk about return trips. We have counters on all of our sections that we move around. Even if every one of those users were return trips of someone going back, back and forward across a counter, it's still a hell of a lot of people that are using our paths. We've got anecdotal feedback. We know we build it and they will come. It's been hugely successful in the sections that have been opened, and we haven't yet realised the true potential because we've only opened sort of sections that are quite fragmented. Again, we're a charitable trust. We have a full-time employee of less than half a person, just to put into context of who we are and who comes to you guys pleading for money. Like I say, we're a charitable trust. I'm employed for just a handful of hours a week, and we have a general manager as well. So what have we done in the Ngaruawahia section? We've built from the township of Ngaruawahia all the way along the boulevard to just south of the Ngaruawahia golf course. Whoops. Sorry. It's just a vision looking across to Tuaranga Waiwai. At the moment we end just at that arrow just south of the Ngaruawahia golf course, and we're currently building off-site, there it is, the longest bridge of its kind in New Zealand, the longest cable arch bridge, to the tune of nearly $2 million, because AFCO didn't want us going anywhere near their property. So it's added a huge cost and a huge length of time to the project, but what we have out of that could have been an unfortunate situation is now a wicked opportunity, which will be opening in October. So that bridge will look like that when it's completed. The colours obviously pretty vibrant, representing our region and our lush landscape. And that will open up a section and link the two sections between Narrawahia and the Hamilton Gardens, which will be a section of about 30 kilometres, where you won't have to touch a road, 3 metre wide concrete path, predominantly linking into the existing network in Hamilton City. So we're really excited about, that'll be the longest section that we have, and a real chance to sell the product of a full day's bike ride in our region, or walk or anything else. From the Horotū to Hamilton section, it's about 20 kilometres. I'm just showing you visuals of what's there and how it's been used. We've opened also a Perry Bike Skills Park. That's when it was being constructed. That's clearly not the finished product, which is just a handful of metres off the Horotū section, so you can ride your bike from the city for about 10 k's and get to that new Horotū Business Park with a Bike Skills Park. In the Cambridge sections, we've got a 3k section out of Cambridge to the north to the velodrome, and then about a 15k section south of Cambridge to the start of the rowing course, which looks a little bit like that, which get great numbers. The 3k section out to the velodrome is hugely popular, having a destination within a rideable, walkable, runnable, mobility scooterable distance to a coffee stop. In terms of that connectivity, it's proved to be a real why people and how people want to use the path to get from A to B, but equally to get to a destination. Just other visuals of open sections and how people are using it. Another bike skill park and a playground that we've just opened outside the velodrome. Another reason why it's hugely popular with families. And where we're at now, so they're the sections that we have been opened and how they've been used. Again, the bridge will be open in October. We've got a date of October the 27th for that bridge, where we hope the Minister of Transport will be coming. And where we're at the moment, we have a wicked opportunity with the Transport Agency, New Zealand Transport Agency, who we've been working really closely with to design and complete the route between Hamilton and Cambridge, which we will see as a really busy, important route of the whole picture. There it is in the pink there in the middle, obviously. Oops, here we go. So the basis of this is effectively the New Zealand Transport Agency. There it is. We approached them. They have funded a business case for this section for the first time ever in our project. We've had Transport Agency funding for the Narrawahia section, but this opportunity between Cambridge and Hamilton has, we've followed the business case approach with the Transport Agency, the Treasury business case approach. We've finished the detailed business case that the Transport Agency and all three councils have contributed to, but largely funded by the Transport Agency, who've really they've really put their hand forward to show their willingness to support this section to its completion. Let's just show the business case approach. We've got a partnership and have had great attendance at all the stakeholder workshops from yourselves, from Waipa, from Waikato District, from Regional Council, ourselves, Te Awa, and obviously the Transport Agency that have attended all the business case meetings, and we've got a final completed detailed business case with a preferred route, which I know it's a little bit small, I'm sorry. The route within Hamilton leaves the velodrome and follows the river for about 3 or 4 kilometres along landowners, private landowners, all of whom are very excited about the prospect. It then links into a local road network, a little bit beside the expressway, but not completely beside, very, very short. Links into the Tamahiri structure plan, past the school in Tamahiri, onto Newell Road, past Punnet Cafe, and then back down River Glade, and then through Hammond Park and into Hamilton City Gardens. So that's just a nutshell of where the route will go. So a little bit of mixture of local roads and riverside, and then linking into the important places of interest like Tamahiri, which is a really important pick-up for commuters. That route's, that's a southern route, from the velodrome through to Penkara Road, and then the section in Hamilton, with you can see the boundary there going through the Manganua Gully. There we go. So this is a rapid fire death by PowerPoint here. Like I said, the section within Hamilton City Council's boundary is approximately 1.7 kilometres, 1 3/4 kilometres. It's a pretty short section, but obviously a really important section to make the whole project happen. We've been, not personally yet, but talking with the Riverlea Ecological Society in Hammond Park. We have some challenges in there, which we're really keen to resolve with them for the best outcome for everybody, so that we're in consultation with them at the moment in Hammond Park to use the existing boardwalk, and then coming into Hamilton Gardens, which will then link up to the existing path out towards Horotū. So in terms of what's so important about this, and from Te Awa's perspective, we see the benefits for our community, for the health, for the vibrancy of our communities, for getting our families out there. It's a free, inspiring, accessible playground, basically, that people can use, whether you're on a mobility scooter with your kids, walking, running. We see a real opportunity for economic development. It's a world-class tourism asset. It's a really good platform for business development. It can attract events, both local and international, and equally we're creating jobs with world-class construction. We made a sort of a line call, put a line in the sand when we first started as to whether we'd build this thing out of gravel or whether we'd go the full gold-plated, diamond-encrusted concrete path. And it was a really good debate at the time, and we decided we wanted it to be multi-purpose. We didn't want anyone to be excluded from being able to use it, but equally we didn't want to be a burden when we come to ask you guys for money cap in hand and then tell you it's going to cost you another 200 grand to maintain this thing every year for years to come. That didn't sit well with us nor with anyone else we were asking for money. So by making it concrete, whilst it costs approximately 600 grand a kilometre, up to $2 million a kilometre if we're creating boardwalks, the burden on ratepayers on council in the future is virtually nil, compared to lots of bike trails that have been built around the country where literally it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of maintenance each year. So that's not us. For our environment, like I say, we work really closely with Enviro schools and Trees for Survival, and we see creating access for then riparian planting is a really big part of what we do. Telling the story of our culture and heritage and our amazing Waikato River. At the moment, actually, we're building in Narrawahi, and we have a full-time archaeologist that works alongside us during the construction phase. We sort of budget what we think it's going to cost, and then they find an artefact, which they've just found on the other side of the river, which is now costing us an extra $50,000, but we'll be able to turn that into part of the story as to what happened there, what the weapon or tool it is that we've found, and how it was used. So it's a really, really cool part of telling the story of the history of our region and our river. And then I was just having a look actually through the Hamilton City River Plan in terms of how we align ourselves with you guys, and it's a total coincidence, but you know, obviously the principles of your Hamilton River Plan, which I think is just bloody awesome. People, you know, economic opportunity, a healthy river, and cultural celebration. And they're the very things that we've been talking for 7 years about, the exact same things with Te Awa for our community, for economic development, for our environment, which I've just spoken about, and for our culture and heritage. They're literally exactly the same. I think you guys did steal out, yeah. But it just shows that we're both trying to do exactly the same thing, and we feel like Te Awa is a really important part of what you guys are trying to do with a bigger river plan, but equally obviously in and out of Ferry Bank. And some of your councillors came for a ride with us and went through from the Hamilton Gardens through into a non-alcoholic beverage at Gothenburg, which your ratepayers didn't pay for. It really just brought alive exactly what the potential of what your river plan is doing and how Te Awa could fit in and work with that. So the process from here, the NZTA have signalled a really strong commitment already to the project. They're confirming exactly how much they will contribute to that from the expressway scope. So the expressway came through under budget and under time, which was great, that Waikato Expressway. Hamilton Expressway, I should say. But there was no cycling provision that was allowed in that expressway, which is where our opportunity has come from. So fortunately for us, unfortunately for the Transport Agency, they're now looking to retrofit a cycling provision for that expressway, which is Te Awa, which is that route I've just shown you, which they will be funding, which they've signalled they'll be funding a really good chunk of that. We are looking to meet with you, Richard, soon. He's still in the corner. And the other two CEs of the other two councils to hopefully sign an MOU, not to commit to anything other than just the route, and that the route is a good idea. That's happening in the next couple of weeks. And then we're looking for each council to put Te Awa, to put this connection between Cambridge and Hamilton into their long-term plans with a level of funding attached to it. Because we've gone through the business case approach with the Transport Agency, which they have led, in terms of a prioritised project for funding assistance for the subsidy for National Land Transport subsidy for next year, for the 3 years beyond 18, we're in a really good position to get that subsidy, each council. So from Te Awa's perspective, we'll be asking each council if they can contribute a certain amount of money towards Te Awa, put it in the long-term plan, attached with funding to put us in the best possible put our best possible foot forward for that subsidy for the whole project. Because the brutal reality, if one council doesn't commit, basically the whole project doesn't happen. I'm not sure on our chance of raising another $14 million in the next 3 years either as a charitable trust. So it's a really exciting opportunity that we haven't had in the past for all 3 councils, for our communities and for our visitors. And obviously Hamilton City Council is a really big player in that. Equally, the consultation at the moment, we're consulting with the landowners down in Waipa, which there are no landowners, private landowners here in Hamilton City that we need to consult with, but that's happening in conjunction with all the other things that are going on. The future, long term, we're looking to, our original vision was to cross at Mystery Creek, go through the Peacock subdivision development, and then back through into city from there. The opportunity that we have now with the Transport Agency must stay on the same side of the river that we've just spoken about to meet the Transport Agency's objectives of fastest route between town and city, between Cambridge and Hamilton. Whilst it's not following the expressway and it's not following the river in its entirety, we've compromised sort of halfway in between. But our vision from our perspective is to, once we have this connection built, is to still, and we've been discussing with Mystery Creek options, cross at Mystery Creek, once we have the connection built, tag on a loop from the existing connection across Mystery Creek, link into the Peacocks plan, and then back across and link into the gardens as well. So you have basically 2 options once you get to Mystery Creek. So that's certainly in the future, and we haven't lost sight of that at all. Equally, linking up to the Waikato River Trail starts south of Horohoro, and we're talking with the New Zealand Cycle Trails, we're talking to the Waikato River Trails, and also the Transport Agency as well with their realignment of Cambridge to Pariri.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's just evidence that Bunting wasn't at the. That was just from the councillors' wide that we went on, and I think again it all. Yeah. Anyway, I've talked long enough. Thank you very much for listening to me for the last probably 10-15 minutes.
Thank you.
And any questions, please fire away.
There will be quite a few questions. Thank you for that. And I was really lucky. I got to ride an electric cycle on the way in, but then I had to do all the hard yards on an ordinary cycle on the way back. But never mind. Yeah, they're good, aren't they? So good. All right, so we'll take questions. Councillor Bunting.
Even short. Right, yes, thank you. The bridge is really exciting. Yep. So you're saying it was $2 million. Can you maybe elaborate on who's building it, how, just for our own reference down the track, maybe? Yep,
sure. So that's been built by Emmett's, family-owned company from New Plymouth, I think. Okay. Awesome crew. It came to be because we were going to stay down the western side of the river and come behind AFCO. Obviously, AFCO weren't keen on that happening, so hence why we're building a bridge over to the eastern side. And costs have just escalated over in time as things happen within the construction business. I think we originally allocated about $800,000, and it's now going to be not quite $2 million, but upwards of 1.5. It's actually been moved in a couple of weeks, so it's all been built off-site. We're building it in the paddock of a lovely family called the Beards that have just basically given us their farm to build this thing on. It's got a 3 metre wide concrete platform, 2.5 metre wide, concrete platform. It's all been built off-site, and in about 2 weeks, or quite under, they're literally going to barge it across the river over a period of about 16 hours. So, concrete platform, cable arch, and like I say, the longest bridge of its type in the country, about 138 metres long.
Cool. Okay, cool. Awesome. So with the Mystery Creek loop down the track, that would mean another bridge like that?
Yes, absolutely. Yep, pedestrian bridge.
Just the one, eh?
Pardon?
Be just the one, because you'd use the road, I presume, across. At
the other end.
Yes.
So it'll just be the one at Mystery Creek, and that's sort of with the discussions that we've had with Mystery Creek in the future in terms of alleviating their congestion, giving people another way of getting to field days when things go crazy. And we've met on site a number of times and looked at various positions where a bridge could go. So they're certainly still talking to us, and it's in their long-term vision, I guess, in terms of their strategy with what they want to do. We've had this opportunity now with the Transport Agency that we've followed with gusto. So we haven't been as active on that side yet. But like I say, once once we get this one connection built, that will be the premise to look at the other connections.
And the Hammond Park part, that's obviously you've got some confidential discussions going on, but can you give us any more information on, like, is the ultimate goal to use the existing boardwalks?
Yeah. So we're really mindful of the environment that we're going through. Our vision is to sort of bring more people through and expose the wicked habitat that it is. But we're equally mindful of the sensitivities around that, the environmental sensitivities, but with people that are far more knowledgeable than us. So we're, like I say, I haven't met with them yet. I hope to in the next wee while. Look to see solutions as to how we can still use the existing boardwalk without any impact on that natural environment. And it's looking likely that it will be a dismount.
Oh, okay.
To be honest,
I was going to say, some of it's not actually very cycle friendly, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and there's certain areas that can have no widening, which we totally appreciate. So we're looking at how for what distance cyclists will need to dismount, how we mitigate the risk of people still cycling through, various structures to get people off their bikes, signage. Yeah. So there's literally working with that at the moment, and due to meet back with the Gribbly Environmental Society.
And having done the new Plymouth ones and just been completely staggered by how cool that is, have you getting a lot of interest from the tourist sector?
Yeah, we work absolutely work closely with Jason and Nicola at Hamilton Waikato Tourism.
Yep.
And like I say, once we've always had the vision that this product will be a really amazing tourism asset for our region. But because we've built a little pocket here, and then we've built 3Ks here, and we've built 5Ks here and 10Ks here, we haven't realised its benefits yet. It was great for local communities. It's getting people out and moving, and families and kids and walkers, and it's absolutely brilliant. But we're yet to realise a true benefit of that tourism dollar until we actually get a decent chunk built, which is what this bridge, as well as a 30k stretch, we've got a really iconic product there in a bridge that people will be attracted to. So we're really excited. We're working with Waikato District in terms of their economic benefit guys, in terms of another tourism company that want to do some tourism stuff around the Hakaramatas and bikes. We're only 1k from the start of the Hakaramatas, so what can we do to link those, to link us and the Hakas together? So loads of potential, and then again, what role do we play in that with a full-time equivalent of about 0.4 of a person?
Fantastic.
So loads of ideas.
Thank you, Councillor Bunting. Can I just ask for the remainder questioners if you can think of your top 2 or 3 questions? We'll get a straightforward answer to that. Just because we do have no,
Sure.
no, it's great to feel the passion, and the questions are important. But this is just for an update, and this of course will all come back to us at points when they may ask for money or support in some other way. But I'm happy to have the discussion. Let's just maybe keep it to our top 2 questions per councillor. And then, of course, then we go to discussion. We do naturally have discussion. Just questions. Councillor Henry.
Thank you so much. I just love your enthusiasm, Sarah. It's great. We need that here a bit more. Councillor Bunting already asked a couple of questions that I want to ask, but one of the other ones, I'm just of that photo. Hamilton Gardens, we're not allowed to bike through. So what are we going to do? So we want to connect it all up, and what do you think needs to happen? Because they're also renting bikes there, and you actually can't ride out. You have to walk out. So what do you think we should be doing there?
We'd love a bylaw change, to be honest, to allow people to ride through at a certain pace. But again, and I think it will be quite an important part of the link. But again, our focus at the moment is getting the thing built, is laying the concrete, raising the money, and getting the thing laid down, and then all those bits that we can add onto it, and things that we can do to enhance the experience, like being able to walk don't be able to ride instead of walk your bike through the gardens, is where we can really put our energy. So we've spoken to the gardens about it, but it really is, I guess, a council call in terms of what needs to happen to allow cyclists and kids and people to move safely, but still on a bike through the destination. So that'll certainly be on our agenda once it's nailed, but it would be great if it would be possible.
Thank you.
I understand, just to cover that off, Councillor Henry, that the next stage of the garden development plan itself is thinking that through, where the cycling bits of the garden might occur. So yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Just so that conversation can happen there, if it helps, does it?
So investigating where it can go. Fair, that's awesome. It's good it's been considered, Cool.
All right, so that's the conversation. Have you finished, Councillor?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gary Mallett.
Thank you, Sarah. Hey, any thoughts on the funding model for how the money's going to be divvied up around the local authorities?
Yes. So, okay, for example, the costs are estimated. The estimated cost of the Waipa section is about over $3 million. The estimated cost of the Hamilton City Council section is between $2 and $2.5 million. The estimated cost of the Waikato District section is about $10 million. So
The
Waikato District, yeah, is about $10 million, yeah. So, you know, it'd be nice to sort of say, look, each council look after their own, but it's not really a fair go on Waikato District, who probably don't necessarily stand to benefit the most from the two, in and out of Cambridge and out of Hamilton, that we would see of the two.
So Sarah, so that's the total amount that needs to be, but
Yes.
the model, what I was after was sort of some sort of what's a rational way of divvying those costs up? Yeah.
So what we're looking at doing is to have the project identified in the NLTPs with funding attached, to then take to the Transport Agency for the subsidy, for the NLTP subsidy. And because we've gone through the business case with them, as I was saying earlier, and we've been given a good steer by them, we believe we're in a really good position to be a priority project to get that funding. And to be honest, and we wouldn't expect any council to contribute we wouldn't expect this project to go ahead if we don't get that subsidy. So we wouldn't expect councils to take the risk and throw money at it if we didn't have the subsidy to effectively the 40 to 60% subsidy to make it happen. On top of that, as well as the NLTP subsidy, we have the opportunity with the expressway, the scope of the expressway budget that we can dip into as well, potentially, to provide for that cycling provision I was talking about.
Just to put
two pots of money.
Okay, just to put a few figures around that, I think you said the local authorities, just very quickly totalling up, is about 15 to 16 million.
That's a total bill.
And that we hope is all eligible for NZTA funding, which could be around the 50%. You said 40 to 60. So we're looking at possibly 7 million, if we get NZTA money, we're looking at possibly between 7 and 9 million, say, for the local authorities to divvy up. Okay.
And equally Te Awa, so we'd look to be a contributor to that as well. But I mean, it's a whole chicken and egg. Now we've raised 14 million. A lot of that some of that was from council funds, but a lot of that was we fundraised for that with Community Trust. So we'd see our role, we'd play a role in that funding as well once we have the commitment from councils. So, but again, that's where we're good at what we do in terms of once we have commitment from councils and Transport Agency to know the project's a goer, that's where we can go ahead and raise the rest of it. You know, I mean, being realistic, to go ahead and ask a funder for $15 million from our perspective is just about impossible.
Yeah.
But
thus far, how have you divvied up any funding from local authorities?
So, that's a really good question. So we're waiting for the Transport Agency to come back to us with that expressway budget and what's possible. So that expressway budget, in terms of that big chunk of Waikato District, that is a huge chunk within their boundary. Like, it's very unreasonable to expect them to cough up for all of that.
Not really.
We're literally talking
Don't help out with anything else.
daily to the Transport Agency to see what scope there is within the expressway budget as a starting point. So then we'll know what that $15 million for the whole build will then become X. And then we can go to the councils and say Waipa have already committed $1.5 million. That's locked away where they can't wait for us to spend it. So we're accelerating down at the Cambridge end with landowners and we'll start construction there first likely to spend that money. But once we know what that expressway budget is looking like, then we can go ahead and we'll come back during the submission process and be quite specific as to what we expect each council to write.
Thank you, Sarah.
And to be honest, I think it'll be quite similar in terms of council's contributions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson.
Thanks, Sarah. Explain the bylaw comment in relation to Hammond Park. So is that because they're...
Not Hammond Park, no, that was Hamilton Gardens.
Hamilton Gardens,
Hamilton Gardens. At the moment, you're not allowed to write. I was told when I contacted the council about it years ago that it was a bylaw that you had to dismount at the Hamilton Gardens. So,
okay.
But that was a good
look.
Yeah.
Well,
2 years ago. Security at the gardens. So at the moment, we don't have like pathways that would direct bikes clearly through. So that end up it's controlling the use of bikes on the actual Hamilton Gardens. I hadn't known it was in a bylaw, but.
Okay, well, let us look into that rather than debate it now. I think it's a good point.
No, I don't just want to look into it because I want us to say if there is any bylaw or other regulatory changes, we should be starting the process to change them because it takes bloody 6 months or something. So if there's not, then it's just a matter of...
I'm just saying
I hadn't
we
thought
can't
there
do
was
that today, but I think
a bylaw. I hadn't, and Angela's saying it's not. So Councillor O'Leary is saying it's not.
I think
so,
the Gardens told me it was a bylaw, but that's...
Yeah, so I want to maybe...
can we do that in the bit in the discussion, please, Dave?
Hang on, please.
Just 2 short questions, and you can raise those issues in your discussion because they are good points.
Well, no, I'm asking staff. I thought I could ask questions of them as well.
You can ask a question.
What it is, and if not, to get back to us today for clarification, so we know what we have to do. Because I can't, in a conversation, in the deliberations, ask for something when we don't know what the issue is.
Would you like to answer that?
I'd say it's a practice that's become a custom because that's how they control the use of bikes on the, at the gardens. I had thought there wasn't a bylaw that covered that, but I would get staff to double check that today.
Yep. So if we can, okay. And the other one related, Sarah, to the funding. My understanding of and I don't know whether it's a law or regulation or what, when NZTA builds an expressway now, they're required to provide for all modes. There's some sort of statement like that. Now, so when they do that, and I appreciate you've latched onto a good thing and it's good that they didn't put a cycleway alongside the expressway. Who'd want to ride on it there. But their funding for that expressway road is 100%. So why wouldn't the funding for the cycle mode also be 100%?
It's not actually a rule as such. It's a strong wording that they must that they should go to every length, I think, to provide a cycleway. On expressways or national highways.
Along the route of.
Along route of, yes. But it's not a binding law as such.
So maybe, do you think they need some encouragement to go closer to 100% than they currently
we are encouraging them as much as we possibly can.
Maybe we'll join your encouragement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that does seem, I mean, if you're in a car, there's no local body funding, there's no selling cakes at stalls or going to pokey trusts.
Yeah, you can actually ride your bike on the expressway though, so it's legal to ride your bike on the expressway. Yeah, you'd be So it's not like it's a motorway where there's no other option, which I think is where they have perhaps been given themselves a little bit of a get out of jail free card. Yeah.
Okay.
But we've got a really good relationship with them, like I say.
We won't upset the relationship, we might just give them a bit of
So thank you, all good questions. Just mindful of time, I'll move on to Councillor Tooman, please.
Sarah, I noticed the bridge which is just south of Narrawa here at the moment. At first I thought it was a big fresh irrigation system which was going to go in there, but obviously it's not. So will you go across that bridge, along the eastern side of the river and then back over Horror-2 Bridge?
Exactly, and that links up to where we are now.
Okay. The other thing is, of course, is maintenance on the cycleway. I noticed on occasions that visibility on some of the bends is with trees and shrubs and all that sort of stuff. Trying to see around those bends with somebody coming towards you at about 60k, head down and bum up sort of thing. And I've noticed there's groups of school kids now cycling in packets of 20 or 30. There seems to be usually a teacher at the front and a teacher at the rear, and the kids are sort of yakking away and have got no idea of what's coming the other way. Is there any maintenance or anything like that to try and increase the visibility on the bends for the cyclists?
Certainly in terms of clearing scrub and trimming trees and things, which is obviously once we give the asset back to the council, that's the council's responsibility.
Okay.
But it's good hearing that feedback because we're also, in terms of signage, the only other thing we can do really is signage.
Yep.
And be really, really smart with our signage. We've been working with your signage team here, with the parks team here, to work into your existing signage strategy throughout your parks department about what we can do and how we can make Te Awa more visible but equally safer. So, work in progress, to be honest. But it really is just signage, and I think once we get these things built and realise how people are using them and what the risks are. One of them was dog walkers, people walking their dogs off a lead, and so we've put up extra signage for that. And you're still going to get idiots,
Okay.
to be honest. Unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Tooman. Councillor Gallagher.
Just longer term, and I'm just wondering the purview around the opportunity from Cobham bridge through to the next new Peacock's bridge crossing, and then beyond with the Peacock structure plan to the Narrows Bridge. Can you just say what sort of interactions to date you have had or will have with City on that particular long-term route? Because it seems to me that obviously delivers you in the long term a stunning river side route down to the Narrows.
Absolutely. So very little interactions with the city about that. We met with Mark Peacock and some other landowners a number of years ago now, probably 3 years ago now, and bushwhacked through a lot of that potential land. That was our original priority, that route, but it was also when Peacock's we were told was going to be probably more like 20 years away. So over time, we carried on working business as usual, had this opportunity come in with the Transport Agency, and so those discussions have sort of been shelved apart from still talking with Mystery Creek. So to answer your question, very little with council. We've met with Mark Peacock and the landowners who are very, very interested at that stage. Once we get this project sorted, that would be our next cab off the rank in terms of how we go about that and what the potential is.
We'd certainly be keen that you keep a very watchful eye so that by error or mistake our own staff people don't make decisions around structure plans, bridge design.
Yep.
That I would assume that you guys will be totally on the ground to be consulted.
Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, and certainly now that it's been possibly an accelerated project, we'll be having a lot more interest in it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Stay a second. There'll be some discussion, but thank you for all the questions. They were all really good questions. Councillor Bunting has indicated that he'd like to move the report be received. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Casson, thank you. Just before we go in. Sure. Just a little clarity before we go into the discussion. I'll get to your amendment, Dave, if that's okay. There is no bylaw. That has been confirmed through staff. It's actually a part of their safety measures. So
that makes it easier.
That may influence any commentary or feedback that councillors want to give in their debate.
The council staff might want to know that too.
So we'll
cool.
Really, obviously some bit of work to be done there. Councillor McPherson, your amendment.
So that would be an A, and a B, which this may be acceptable to the mover, that council develops the Hamilton Gardens facility to enable cycling through the gardens.
Happy to do that? Are you happy with that, Councillor Casson, as a seconder? We'll get it up on the board. Did you get that, Becca? We'll get it up on the board so that before we take the vote, everyone understands the final thing. And we'll go into discussion now, and Councillor Bunting is the mover, so...
Yep, happy to move this motion. I think it's great. Thank you.
My goodness, that deserves a gold star right there, doesn't it?
He's freeing up time for the Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Casson.
Hey, thanks, Sarah, for your report. Like other councillors said, you've got a bit of passion running there. Just a bit of a correction, Emmett Brothers from Wanganui.
Oh, sorry.
From the mighty Wanganui, where I used to
Apologies, that's a Freudian slip.
I used to work for them. I used to be a bridge builder as well.
Oh, gee, brilliant.
So I know what sort of good work they can do, those guys.
Yeah, they're good people.
Look, it's about time we make full use of our river in the Hamilton and the Waikato, a bit like they do in Brisbane. You know, they've got a beautiful system there for running, walking, cycling, everything else, all the way from Auckland all the way through. So it's good. And just to quote you from 2004 in Athens, it looks like we've got a wicked thing going.
Yeah. Probably did come out of my mouth actually then. Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's a really cool opportunity. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bunting's already spoken. Doesn't need to, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. I could support the initial motion, but not the amendment, because what we're doing is approving a project without any funding at all associated, which is something that's gotten us into trouble many, many times. I think this thing should go through to the 10-year funding round and be up for bids like everything else is, as was the original staff recommendation. What we've got now is with all due respect to my mate here, a very loose recommendation about that it go forward. What is it?
No, hang on. Can we get the motion on the board?
Yeah, it's coming.
Facility to enable cycling
Becca's
through the gardens.
typing it up as fast as she can. But just a clarification on that, my understanding is the recommendation speaks to the enabling it through looking at the plan rather than actually implementing it at this point in time. Is that right, Dave?
Well, I'll talk about that when I come to it, but
Okay.
you know that current saying, let's do this?
Yeah. But I can easily.
Let's do this irrespective of the costs.
But Councillor Mallett, just to make it easy for you to take your position, I can easily take those two in two parts. That would not be an issue, and that will enable people to vote for all or part. Okay.
Okay. That, and my point is B is completely open-ended, and I don't know what advice it gives to staff at all, to be honest.
Well, we could put some words in around investigate the feasibility of Hamilton Gardens enabling cycling, because there'll be some paths that are quite suitable and some not, or we know this.
Because at the moment we've got, it's a blanket statement saying
Dave?
develop cycling in the gardens.
Councillor McPherson, would you be happy for a little bit of an amendment to the words to use the words that Helen is suggesting might help us, which are around about...
Investigating the feasibility. There are a number of factors we'd need to look at to ensure that we could put pathways through and maintain safety standards.
Well, no, I think mountains are being made out of molehills here, so
Okay, well, if it's in your hands.
Don't take me off the list, please. So I was put on the speaking list.
No, I'm not.
So I want to stay on it.
That's fine. Okay, so we'll leave that then till the end of discussion. There may or may not be some tweaks after people have heard each other speak. So, Councillor Mallett, have you finished your
Yeah, that was my concern.
Okay, so in fact, Councillor Gallagher is next.
Thank you. Just obviously.
He wasn't? Hold on, class. Do you mind if Councillor McPherson takes this?
I would cheerfully yield to my good friend David
Okay,
McPherson.
thank you.
Madam Chair, this is one of the problems with our system, that if someone is asked a question, which I was, and they get cut off the speaking order because they answer it.
Yeah, no,
and
I get that, and that's
Mallett.
why, and it's hard to remember always the order, but your dear colleague has said, please go first.
Thank you, dear colleague. Look, a mountain is being made out of the molehill. The purpose of the Part B was to make sure that we enable it, and if there were costs to be needed to do that, I would expect staff would come back to us with a subsequent report. It doesn't say tomorrow. The path's obviously not going to be, the whole route is not going to be ready for a while. It was to say, get cracking on making it happen. If it's a bit of a change of wording or a sign here or there, that's one thing. If it needs more than that, that's another thing. But let's do it. Let's do this. And actually tell us what it is you need, if you need anything. Is really the
intention of it. Thank you for clarifying that.
Can I just point of order? Is that what that says? Because I don't think that's what that says. The words have meanings, and those meanings are important. That's not what that says.
It's true that it doesn't say 2017, Gary, but...
okay, let's not get into a debate. I think the key here is that we have mover and a seconder and somebody who made an amendment that are all in agreement around this wording. At this,
authorised to spend money that isn't officially authorised.
We'll go through the process and you can vote against that if it makes you feel uncomfortable. Councillor Gallagher is next.
Thank you. Look,
you've got right to reply.
I do thank you all collectively for your positive vision, and part of me reflects on all of those people who opposed the velodrome. Some of those people who opposed the velodrome now I see walking around the pedestrian track, and this is about negative and positive energy, and it is so wonderful that we have this riverside, your project collectively represents that enormous positive energy which will have, in my view, profound economic and social benefits for our region. I want to clearly say to our staff team, to our Chief Executive, it is absolutely crucial when we talk peacocks development, when we talk the potential, the new bridge coming across to the peacocks from Cobham Drive, is that the Te Awa Riverside Ride, your people must be involved on the ground in micro detail. There is huge opportunity for the cycle track attachment, clip-on, call it what you would, across that bridge. There is huge opportunity for innovative river ride along the riverside, etc. And even, can I just say, even initially, even if it's kind of the sort of semi-gravel type track, it's a bit of a cheapie. But the sooner we get it in my view, the better. And the other thing I would say is, with respect, Sarah, you sound very optimistic about the river plan. This river plan is determined in this chamber. We have a very tough LTP process, As the chair of the River Plan Task Force, with my good colleague Angela over there as deputy, I thoroughly encourage you to make public submissions during that River Plan, our LTP process, because the River Plan will carry on or not based on the public support and partnerships that we develop. And I think, with respect, it is a crucial part of our narrative, but it's not a done deal.
Thank you. Your right of reply is coming. I just want to say a few words myself, if I might. And just note, just to make sure that we've got that on the board, Dave, you asked if the mover and seconder were happy with the additional wording, didn't you? So it's not an amendment. It is just yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, they said yes. I just want to check so we get it right at the end. Thank you. Just make a few comments. Really excited about the possibilities within this project. Have been for a very long time. Good to hear that you are having the conversations with the Riverlea Society, because there are such a passionate and hard-working group of people out there, rain and shine, every week on weekend planting. So I do just urge we have to get a win-win around this particular stretch of Hammond Bush. But outside of that, I'm looking forward to the day where we say we can ride from Ngaruawahia right through to Cambridge. So thank you very much. Councillor Bunting, right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. Just wondering, if it may make it easier, and Gary, would you be happy if we amended B to say includes regional measures in Hamilton City Gardens facilities planning to enable cycling? Would you be happy with that?
No, it should say brings back a report showing costs and
so just
okay.
Okay, so just a point of process on this.
So much to do with the cycle plan. This is what we do in the gardens.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Councillor Mallett. It was Dave.
Well, I was just asking Mark.
No, it's not my amendment.
I know it's not your amendment.
No, it's not. It's the motion.
Motion.
And
Yeah.
seconder's motion. Full stop.
I get that, but he went.
No, that's okay. Well, in that case, I just repeat my
clarification.
opening statements and think it's great.
You're happy with it?
Yep, it's what
You're
it's
happy
gonna
with it, Councillor Casson, because you're the seconder? Oh, extremely happy. Brilliant. So in that respect, we will put them separately, that we receive the report, and B, to enable any councillors with dissenting opinions to do so. So we're just doing A, go to your voting. That's just for the report to be received. Okay, thank you. And now we'll go to B, which is that as the intent has been explained to you. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, councillors. By majority.
Thanks, Anne.
The motion is carried, 9-4-3 against.
Oh. Sorry, should we do it again? Do it again. Second time lucky. Yes, sorry, we are. Yeah.
I've got a feeling Gary's going to push the wrong button again. So he did it again.
The motion is carried, 10-4-2 against.
Thank you, and thank you once again, Sarah. You are liberty to go, but we always enjoy your presentations and you to bring.
Sarah, can you give me a call about that? Can you give me a call about that? Sure.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Okay, councillors, the next on our list is we've got a couple of annual reports coming up, and the first one is the Gallagher Academy of Performing Arts, which is item 7 on your agenda. Welcome. Welcome to our guests. Welcome. How do you want to run this?
I'd just like to introduce our guests here. We've got Jeremy Bell, who's the Academy Manager at the Academy of Performing Arts up at the University, and we've got Alistair Jones here, who is the Senior Deputy Vice-Chancellor at the University. So it's these guys' report. We are comfortable from staff that they've met. Allow them the space to talk and to answer any questions. So thanks, team.
Okay, thank you. So do you want to put some context in? We'll take the view that council have read the report, but if you would like to highlight some of the things that you think would be of interest to council, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you very much, Councillor Southgate and councillors. This really is the 18th report that we have provided council. It also reflects within the report the 18 years of partnership with the City Council in terms of the Gallagher Academy of Performing Arts. And what I'll do is I'll and I think one of the things we want to highlight is the amount of community use, the teaching and research use, as well as other university use. But I'll hand over to Jeremy, and I'll take it as read, but really to highlight the importance of the partnership and any other highlights that Jeremy, as the Academy Manager, wants to highlight. Thank you.
Jeremy.
Thank you.
You just need to press your little thingy. Oh, you're there. Right, you're gone.
This one
good.
here?
It's good.
No,
Leave it.
You're on now.
I'm on. I'm audible.
There's a trick to it.
I can speak up. Thank you. The contract requires us to demonstrate that 25% of the Academy's use in any 1 year is genuine community use. And I'm very pleased to say that ever since this contract was first signed in 1998, we have not only met that target, but exceeded it really, sometimes quite impressively, actually, up to 1 year, 47%. But we've always been kind of in the 30s. So I think that demonstrates consistency of relationship between the Academy and its community activity and users. And I'm delighted about that, because when the Academy was first built, it was a strike in the dark, if you like, an impressive building, but there was some doubt at the time as to whether or not the community would have genuine access to it, and I think we've more than proven that case over the 18 years of our relationship, so I'm delighted about that. I'm also, in bald economic terms, in the last year, you'll note in the report that we're actually returning $30,000 to the City Council this year. It does go up and down year in, year out, just depending on how the accounts balance up every year. And sometimes we've given you money back, and sometimes you've given us money back. So it is swings and roundabouts in those terms. But this is certainly a much larger sum we're returning than has been the case in the past. So I guess, in those crude, simple numerical terms, it's a very good news story for the City Council, I believe. I mean, there's also been an increase in use in 2016. We have a raft of people who use the Academy year in, year out in their regular programs, and those would include many local arts groups, such as Opus Orchestra, Carving and Ice theatre groups, a theatre company, schools, music festivals, local dance groups, local Māori groups, local schools, obviously, for different kinds of functions. And the number of uses every year can change quite dramatically, even with just one phone call, when someone says, we would like to hold some regular dance classes at your academy. And suddenly that will mean we have 40 extra community dancers uses over a year, because they'll be using once a week in every school week through the year. So that's, you know, I love getting those phone calls, and I love seeing those people coming into the building all the time. And that those regular users are the, you know, our most enthusiastic patrons sometimes. They just love the facilities, so we're delighted that they come in. I mean, I've just pointed to a few highlights of the year in the report. I think the point I'd like to make, though, generally, is that we act as a kind of we are a national venue as well as a local venue, and some of the best arts groups in the country are coming to Hamilton because of our facilities, both in music and in theatre and in dance. And I'm always very proud when those groups arrive and we're able to get the opportunity to experience their fantastic work. And so from a Hamilton point of view, in terms of the arts ecosystem, I think the Academy is an essential and important ingredient in what we have available for venues in this city.
Thank you very much. So now you're ready for questions. Thank you, Councillor for McPherson.
Thanks. In the report, your report, not the staff report on what's our page 21, but it's got your pie chart graph. I don't know whether it's your... Yeah. You've got for the blue section for community use, you're calling it community or educational use. In the staff report, they're just talking about the agreement relating to community use. So I'm just wondering what's the difference between community and educational, and what does the heads of agreement actually say? Which is it both, or is it just community? I'm a little bit confused.
Yeah, it's taken straight from the contract, actually. There's a defined category which is community / educational. Educational does not mean university, it means schools outside the university.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So that was originally, that's always been the case all the way through.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. So the other question, which also relates to that graph that I had, is that split of the total usage shown in the pie graph there. Is that measured on the number of hours hired for each, or the number of hires?
No, the number of hires. Not the number of uses.
Okay,
what's
so
called a use. Yeah.
Are we comparing apples with apples? Like as a community use for a 2-hour event, that seems to be compared with, say, a day-long event or a week-long event or something like that?
In these terms, it is exactly the same thing. So a full-day event, a school ball, for example, arriving at 9 o'clock in the morning and not finishing till midnight, is the same as an afternoon tea or an honorary fellowship award, you know. So that's just...
So if we did an hours measurement, and say by hour, broke it down to hours, which I think some theatres do, would it show roughly the same figures, do you think? What's the average usage in each of those areas?
I think it's really hard. I've never done that analysis because I've never been required to, but and it would... I can't really answer that question, to be honest, you know. I don't know.
Well, I'm just wondering whether we're not really necessarily comparing apples with apples. We don't know that, and...
This is the system we've had for a long time, since the beginning of the contract, and so this has been the nature of the figures that we've been presenting year in, year out. And this is the first time we've had that question, to be honest. So I guess we've never had to make that kind of analysis. You know,
I'm sorry I haven't asked it for the last 17 years, but but I just have this niggling feeling that it mightn't be a direct comparison there. A lot of community usages might be quite short. You're thinking a lot of university usages might be quite short. We don't...
Exactly. It's really hard to measure. Yeah.
I think the other thing is that we have to decide on a measure. So a school using it for a whole day, a band using it for a whole weekend, or the university using it for half an hour. You've got to decide on a measure.
Well, whenever you hire, I hire school facilities and community facilities quite a lot for sporting events, we hire it by the hour.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
but maybe you don't.
That's one.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that question's been explored. Any others?
Yeah, I'm not that satisfied with the answer, but it's not the fault of the presenters.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Councillors, if we can sort of round up to the top 3 points questions we want answered, otherwise we will run into other people's time as well. So the next questions come from Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, look, on the staff report, page 16, which I'm not sure if you have access to, point 11, it refers to the fact that the university is investigating ways to promote the story of council's commitment alongside the university. As the 20th anniversary is approaching, there's thought to visually sharing the story, etc. What does this involve? What have you got in mind there?
Kia ora, Councillor. This was a bit of a point that was talked about last year at the presentation of this report, of how the average person coming into the theatre may or may not realise the commitment that Hamilton City Council has made to the arts sector. And so in the conversations, both from HCC staff level and the university, we kind of talked about how does this story get told in a way that's not just a static plaque, essentially, but how do we celebrate the story of the partnership between the university and council for the betterment of the arts sector? and it was kind of in those conversations that we went, well, 20 years is coming up, and that's a reason to tell the story rather than just randomly telling the story. And so those specifics are still to be negotiated and talked through between the...
Okay, so it's just an idea at this stage. So given that the council put in $2 million back in 1998, I mean, with respect to, isn't this 20 years too late?
Just on that, there are plaques on the building, and so there are the original contributors to the builder are acknowledged, and so I guess this is an ongoing wider story rather than just talking about the money. It's talking about the attitude of partnership between.
Well, that's what I'm talking about as well. I guess I'm just mindful of the importance of ratepayers being aware that you know, almost $4 million has been spent.
So this is for your debate?
Yeah, it's a question.
A question.
I think Councillor Taylor is making a point that highlights his question.
I'm just asking him if he's getting to a question.
Yeah,
Thank
I am.
you.
Well,
Thank you,
I'm
Chair.
just saying I'm mindful of the fact that ratepayers need to be aware of where their money's going, and there's a lot of money has gone in that direction in the last 20 years, and it just seems to me, I'm asking you, shouldn't that story of the council's commitment been told a lot earlier and a lot better for some time? You have to look really hard to see evidence of the council's commitment to that facility.
No, thanks, Jeff. I think that you know, there were a number of funders 20 years ago, and they were acknowledged, I think, well at the time. I mean, it was one of the first facilities in Hamilton of its kind where it had been raised, you know, there was community funded. And council contributed to that, the university contributed to that, as well as significant other families and other philanthropic groups within the city. And I think at the time there was significant acknowledgement of the ratepayers. The notion of the partnership, I think, is valued, and it is an annual contribution so that we can open it up to the wider community, and that was done deliberately. So I think we could have done more, but if we look at how we promote it, the Hamilton City Council is seen as a valued partner within that whole process. So we can always do things better, but I think as far as what we did originally 20 years ago, I think that there was the City Council was recognised as part of a major community fundraising event, and the reason for the contract is so that it remains part of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Pascoe.
Chair, and thank you very much for the report today. Just a question on your rate, on the rates that you charge. Do you have a variable rate between community groups and commercial events?
Yes. This was initiated when the partnership was first created between City Council and University. At that time, City Council venues distinguished between commercial rates and community rates, and we went in line with that when the building first opened, and we've sustained that all the way through our history. So we actually have a 50% discount on community events over and above commercial or private events. Yeah. Which is advertised on our website.
And do those rates compare, and are they generally on a par with other facilities in the city? And I'm thinking here of, you know, potentially whether or not they compete at a discount for other council venues.
Yeah, look, we are certainly in a marketplace here, and I will get phone calls and people will say to me, I'm talking to several venues. Price is not always the main determinant of why they decide to come with us, but obviously sometimes it is. As for the actual price competition, we are very transparent about our prices, and I have to say that not all other venues are transparent.
Are or aren't?
Aren't. And venues price themselves differently in different kinds of ways. Some people offer you a package, but we're very kind of, this is the venue hire, this is the staffing, this is the equipment. And so we try and be as very open as possible about what we're charging. And I think people are appreciative of that. They can see absolutely why it is they're paying what they're paying for, and they get what they get. Yeah.
Okay. And do you have a firm policy that distinguishes community events from commercial events and university events? I just say that looking down the list on page 29, and I see there's a Waikato University Law Society mentoring evening, there's a Nigel Latta Institute of Professional Learning, there's Tourism New Zealand, which might sort of overrun into something that might be university curriculum and or commercial type organisations like Tourism New Zealand, Nigel Latta, for example. So do you have a firm policy that that clearly identifies what is a community event, what is a commercial event, and what is a university educational event?
If I work from the commercial spectrum backwards, and if Spark ring me up and say they want to hire the building, it is obviously a commercial company who are hiring the building. If somebody wants to use the building for a wedding, it is clearly a private function for a family event. If we have a very commercial entertainer coming to our venue, such as Kelvin Cruikshank, who comes to us quite regularly, he's quite obviously there as a commercial entity. Once you get beyond those very clear commercial or private uses, then I think the discussion becomes about, well, who is it who's coming to see this event? How open is it to the public? And who is likely to be the audience for this? And the organiser is part of that decision, but also who's it going to benefit and who's going to enjoy it most and attend it. And then you start to see that actually the community is coming in. Nigel Latta may well have been organised by the Institute of Professional Learning, but there were people coming from all over the Waikato and all over the city of Hamilton to see that event.
But they might have been paying market rates?
No, not at all. It may well have been free, actually, I'm not sure.
When things are open to the public, where it's free for the public, you know, in terms of our community engagement and in terms of supporting the community, then obviously that's done as a community event. So the Nigel Latta thing would be paid for by the Institute of Professional Learning. They will pay his fee, which is a university entity, which earns its money from contracts from government. That's a way of us giving back to the community, is by then not charging for people to come to that event, or a coin donation, like at the 1 o'clock music concerts, for example.
Right. Okay, and just some questions on moving forward. I noticed that there's no budget in the paper for 2017, and some quite significant variations when I look at the comparison to actual results in 15 and 16 compared with the initial budget. And whilst it might be very difficult to explain what might be in the 2017 budget, presumably we're moving forward now with negotiating or potentially negotiating a new contract, and given that the existing contract will expire in 2019. So is the university seeking a renewal of a contract either of this magnitude or similar?
At this stage, we are looking at what that new contract would be. I think one of the things about and we're going through our strategic master plan at the moment, one of the things is that we're very keen on is how we get better public access. So if you're a new person to Hamilton, you've got to wind your way through car parks. You've got to get into Gate 1 and find the academy. It's a world-class facility. And we're looking at how we can open that up more broadly to the community. I mean, we're very passionate as a university that we're engaged with the community. So we'll be looking at ways in which we can develop the infrastructure, but also we want to continue to work in partnership with you, and we need to work out what that will be going forward, and that's the process we're in at the moment.
You're aware that we also have a long-term plan that we are starting work on now too, and that's obviously going to be pretty important in terms of where the city might come to the party with any ongoing funding.
Correct.
Yep. Will the reduced activity in the music faculty at the university result by less use in terms of the university percentage going forward, and therefore potentially under the current model and formula potentially increase the funding required by the city?
Well, I don't think it would. Right. Well, first of all, there's about 3 questions you've asked there, so I'll take one at a time.
Okay, that's fine. Happy if you do that.
I don't believe that there'll be a decrease. The music, the process we're going through at the moment with music is to look at the number of students and number of staff and what we need to be able to teach and research. So that's a process that is going through. The university is obviously committed to continuing to do performances for the wider community, and we're not backing down from that, and it's an important part of the teaching program. Where we are at the moment is that if you look at the facility, originally there was a stage 2 planned, which was to pick up teaching spaces, and at the moment the Academy of Performing Arts is used for both teaching, research and performances. And if we were to build stage 2, then we would actually free up more space for wider community use. In other words, we wouldn't be taking as much space for teaching, because we would actually have dedicated teaching facilities, and that was always on the plan. So at the moment we teach in there, whether it's a piano, someone on the Steinway, that takes bookable space at the moment. So if we look long term, then what we want to do is actually have dedicated teaching facilities as numbers and allow going forward.
Okay, so there's a suite of questions in there, Rob. If you don't mind, I'll
Does
move on to...
that answer? I tried to answer 2 of your questions at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I was. My question was really aimed at whether or not there would be a greater percentage of. That will potentially would be a higher cost to council, given that the teaching percentage, which of course accounts for a share of the overhead or the running costs of the facility, would become less simply because the university music school would be requiring the facility for much less time, given its reduced activity going forward.
Well, the university has a budget to run the whole facility, of which council contributes some of that.
Yes.
Too, and that's how we see it at the moment. So
but
the university
but
takes
our
the
percentage,
risk.
Our funding could go up as a result of less. If the teaching time becomes less, then obviously the costs, which probably in most cases will remain the same, will need to be shared over fewer funders, if you like. If the university is one funder and the council is the other funder, our proportion becomes higher.
No, it's fixed.
So, I think Jeremy would like to have a go at
it's
that.
fixed.
At the moment, as I pointed out at the beginning, the council received 35% of use for last year, but we're still just getting 25% of budget. The amount of money is fixed in the contract. It's not. It doesn't vary according to it's not proportional to the amount of use that we get in the current contract. Going forward into the future, I don't know exactly what kind of relationship we would have on that.
Okay. I don't want to prolong this, but I guess where I'm coming to is, what's in the university's mind in terms of the renewal of the contract, because I think that's important to us. It's also extra important in the short term to us because we have currently fewer theatre facilities in the city too, given during the period while the Founders Theatre is not operational. Sure.
Well, two parts to that. One is it's a fixed contract. We stay above the 25%. In terms of community use, you contribute a nominal amount to the 25%. The second point is that it goes back to my answer to the first question, is that the more that we can free up some space, then we can work with the city so that we can bring a greater variety of arts and performing activities to this city, which is exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Pascoe. Councillor Gallagher, Deputy Mayor Gallagher.
And I'll obviously reserve time for debate and discussion, may have an amendment to put in, but in terms of the recent issue around the Music Academy, given that we are a key stakeholder funder, do you think you could have done better in engaging with groups like the City Council, explaining what your intent was and inviting submissions from us?
Sure, shall I answer that?
It's not really in my sphere.
Pardon?
It's not in my sphere. Really.
No, I mean, we've had, as part of that, we've had a large volume of submissions from the community. We also opened up a council meeting to hear those submissions, and we opened that up to the public. I think one of the things is that we have to be very careful here that there are two separate processes running. One is that the university is looking at what we are doing in the music program on the amount of income that is coming in, and that is directly related to the number of students in the program, a 25% decline in those programs over time. There have been a number of initiatives attempted to be put in place to address that. Those have not been successful. Currently, we're going through a consultation. We have listened, I think, to a lot of advice from the community and from staff about what a future direction will be, and that is currently under consideration by the Dean, Professor Alison Kirkman. In terms, yes, we may have been able to communicate with the council better, but I think it's been a fairly public process that we've been through, and we are concerned. We haven't resiled from in any shape or form of having the facility open for the public. We haven't reduced the number of performances. We have also continued to use it for wider university and community events. So I see the two things as being a little bit separate, but they are related. But we have been absolutely committed to having that facility open to the community.
I would, with respect, I think moving ahead, and you do wonderful things, but in other areas, but I would expect that you would pay attention to your significant stakeholders, of which this council is one. Next question is, when the $2 million was granted back in 1998, was that about a 20% contribution to your capital cost?
12 million.
Or 25? What proportion was it?
It was a $10 million. Yeah, it was a $10 million build.
So it was about
12 million. About 12 million was probably the total cost.
So it's a fifth. And then since then, in total, the ratepayers, all residents of Hamilton via their rates, which every resident pays, $4.25 million over a 20-year period. Do you honestly think that the acknowledgement of that $4.25 million from the people of this city is adequately acknowledged in a very excellent, your very excellent centre, obviously?
Well, I think that goes back to the first question. We, obviously, what was done at the time was done in terms of the acknowledgement. What we're proposing is to show that we're working in partnership with the city to provide a community access. So, I agree with you that I think that we've got to think about how we look at this going forward, Martin. I think that, and that's part of working with the staff, both in terms of the renewal of the contract and how we acknowledge the contribution of the ratepayers to, which is about $120,000 a year, up to $150,000 a year, in terms of the contribution to keeping the facility there for community use.
I mean, in terms of transparency, would you agree with me that if I'm a Hamilton resident, I rent a property, own a property, I all pay rates, right? And I'm enjoying the fantastic activities and performances in the centre there, I would not have a clue that my rates were actually, making a contribution to that place in an ongoing basis. I wouldn't have a clue how significant the council contribution was over 20 years.
Okay, with all due respect, I think that question has been answered a couple of times.
Well, it may be a leading question, but I'm just putting myself in the position which I do as an ordinary resident and ratepayer with not knowledge, and I'm looking at all the acknowledgements of a whole range of sponsors. I'd even argue, even in terms of the original acknowledgement, the capital contribution is probably inadequate, given it was a fifth of the contribution, but putting that back, it just seems to me, and I'll be raising this in debate around, not to do with you, but to do with our council's approach around sponsorship issues, that possibly, if I'm a resident, I really wouldn't have an inkling
Okay, so that is debate now, Councillor Gallagher. And you're making a sound point, but it is
well,
moving
okay,
into
next
date.
question. If the council decided through the LTP process not to continue its partnership, would you still anticipate that there would still be some visual display to acknowledge the quantum of money that has been received to date?
If you decided not to continue to support it on a yearly basis, there is still the acknowledgement of the $2 million that was put in 18 years ago, and I think there'd be the acknowledgement of the contribution of the $4 million in terms of the overall costs if you decided not to proceed, which I think would be a shame. But
given that we are going through a very tough LTP process, and the renewal of this contract is absolutely open book, and we'll obviously be seeking advice from Art Waikato and other organisations as to how we strategically spend quantums of money or not. Do you have any sort of strategy around perhaps sharing with the council earlier rather than later the kind of the vision, to clarify the vision and certainly the vision around, and particularly I acknowledge the need for space, and council should be in this place obviously in a general sense, but just in terms of the vision that you have for that ongoing partnership around community performing space?
Sure. I mean, even in our, absolutely, and I think that's what we'll be starting to work through with the staff going forward, and that's why we've brought this up early, because we want to get into that process and look at what this will look like going forward, particularly in terms of your long-term plan, but also how the university engages as opening its facilities more broadly to the community. Yeah. We have a number. The academy is only one part of the university which we open at very at peppercorn rent to the university. The management school, the lecture theatres are used by schools. Schools are in and out. The community use of the law management boardroom is there for use. And those are not charged at full commercial rates.
And I trust, I totally, absolutely get that and acknowledge that.
And this is only a small part of our wider community engagement, and for for that amount of money, which is 50% of a staff member, in terms of the contribution, I think it's very good value for money.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our last questioner is Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. My question, just a little bit going back to market prices and things like that. You talked about the example, and you may have misquoted this, about dance classes and adds it up to 40 sessions a year, beg your pardon. My daughter goes to ballet and to jazz over and over. This is a private business. She's bought a facility, and I'm paying for. I must be paying for the capital cost of the building as well as that. You did say that those things would get. I think you said they were a community usage, which would suggest to me that they're getting a community rate because it's in your community stats. So is that in a situation where you're somewhat subsidising private sector entities? Because most dance classes are run on and I'm a big fan of the private sector. Yeah. It's the only sector there should be.
Look, it's a hard one to answer, to be honest. Okay. Is it commercial, is it community? And the answer is it's both. There are people who hold those classes and it is something of their living, but the ballet schools tend to be much larger operations, just much larger numbers of students, and different age ranges of children coming in at the 5 to 8 year olds, the 8 to 12 year olds, blah, blah, blah. Yep. And so you've got different tranches of year levels, and probably 30 or 40 kids in each year level. And so then you begin to see that the income possibilities there are pretty healthy, whereas the classes that we're looking at tend to be in the region of maybe 10 to 15 students with variable attendance, and generally only in the kind of hip-hop or contemporary dance area, which is much less popular The ballets are hugely popular. And so I think we have a responsibility to try and assist those kinds of activities, and we have the facilities to do that. And so therefore the community rates seem, I think, totally fair in those situations.
Okay,
So,
I guess,
yeah.
and that's the point. The rate, I mean, the ratepayer to me seems to, there's a grey area where it's going to be difficult to determine whether the ratepayer's funding a commercial business, and it certainly would be if it was my bloody the ballet school, because I know what I pay.
Most of the things you see there, Gary, are not tend to be, you know, what you would see down at Riverlea, or you know, those you know, big dance schools which are running, you know, 5 nights a week.
Yeah.
These are one-off sort of, as you say, you know, some hip hop or rap things which are on a Thursday night for 1 hour for I think, and many of those groups are people who couldn't afford the fees that you and I have had to pay to send our children to those dance classes.
Feel my pain, eh?
I have felt it. I'm past that now, but yes.
Lucky you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for all those good questions. And I guess once the we'll be having another conversation, a strategic conversation about how we go forward sometime next year. Okay, so that's where it sits. So, sorry, have I missed somebody? No. Oh, are you finish your questions? Your name's up, Councillor Gallagher.
No, I assume that if you're moving into debate, I'm just following the mayor.
I am. I haven't got a mover or a seconder at this point in time. Somebody to move. You're still on questions, Councillor King.
I do, Madam, give you notice. I have I'm happy to receive the report, but I'm going to perhaps explore an amendment where I'm asking our staff to look at whole issues of the broader sponsorship issue.
Okay, so if you were able to get the words to staff ahead
Well,
of it,
yeah,
that will be very useful. Meanwhile, sorry, overlooked Mayor King. Mayor King, your questions, please.
So, what was the discount for community use? 50%.
Rates, yeah.
And when you look through the list, and you've acknowledged this, it's very difficult because really there's a community benefit on everything you're doing. But I do understand you've got we had the same issue with ourselves. And you said you're very transparent on your pricing, so you just put your pricing up.
It's on the website.
There's no negotiation, no matter who comes. It is that the price is the price.
The negotiation, I would be honest, tends to be in the area when we're getting in a professional group which is touring the country, when we have to find a way to make it work for them so that they can come, as well as making sure that we can cover our costs as well. Those are the only territory where we will possibly go into some sort of profit share, not profit share because they don't make profits, but box office share or something like that. But we absolutely have a bottom line of covering our costs, and then we look at making sure that we can cover venue hire costs as well on top of that. Yeah. But generally speaking, it is just a straight. This is what it costs to hire the venue. Take it or leave it, essentially. Yeah.
So, who are the groups that you do negotiate with?
They would be people like tour makers who come through maybe twice a year with, I've noticed some shows in the report, the White Guitar last year and also the Book of Everything, which was, actually we didn't negotiate with them because the City Council hired us for that one. It was an unusual situation, but it would be tour makers who are a national touring professional arts group who take work all around the country from Auckland, Wellington, New Plymouth, everywhere. Yeah.
Would you negotiate with a overseas group that came in?
We don't generally get overseas groups. We sometimes get people who will hire us to record in our venue from overseas. It's unusual to get an international artist coming in raw, as it were. Yeah.
So it would be normally a not-for-profit type of group?
Yeah.
And then you would do to encourage them to come, you would say, we'll do a percentage divvy on the tickets sold or per head?
It is generally speaking just a straightforward venue hire. This is the rates on the website, and it says on the website subsidised by Hamilton City Council. Yeah. So they know that they're getting that discount as a result of the grant from City Council. Yeah.
Councillors, just be aware, I think you're looking like you need to head off. Alistair, very shortly.
I've just got Vietnamese police, very high level police delegation I need to see at 11:30. So
okay, so Any more questions quickly, or could we go? That's fine, Councillor Meking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to take an adjournment. We will, of course, and it's for receiving the report, and we'll get back to you whatever additional things may come across. We're going to take a 10-minute adjournment so that we can get Councillor Galler's additional thinking across, and also we've been sat for 2 hours. So thank you very much for coming. Absolutely, you can.
To really appreciate council's support for the facility over the years, and that is genuinely acknowledged by the university. Just want to be clear that the money that is given in each year as part of the contract is not a sponsorship, it's a contract.
Yeah.
And I just think there's been words used around sponsorship, and I just want to make sure before I leave that it's clear that this is a contract as opposed to sponsorship. The original $2 million was the sponsorship.
Thank you very much. That's very good. Thank you for joining us today. And to our guests from Meteor, please bear with this lovely new coffee, tea and machine. Apparently it makes really good coffee. So we'll come back at 25 and we should be able to get through the debate on this item and then on to you. So sorry for the wait. Okay, councillors, if we could please come back to the table and we'll get started. And our next item is item number... Oh, gosh, no, we're going back. We're still on the same item. First of all, we need to move and second item number 7. Or is there a mover or a seconder? Councillor Jane... Oh, thank you. Thank you. Councillor Gallagher, Councillor Casson.
And you'll put my new wording up?
It is. There it is. That's it. Yes? Okay. We're in debate, so feel free to kick off as the mover.
Thank you. And obviously, I acknowledge that during the LTP process, in essence, we will be discussing our ongoing contract arrangements with a number of organisations. And obviously, in terms of this specific ongoing partnership, I would want that discussion to happen in the context, obviously, of the broader performing arts space in terms of where and how we direct our money. I have a very open mind that, subject to this council ascertaining that there will be sufficient community performing space at the university and a relationship with them, then I'm certainly not against an ongoing partnership at all. As I said, I would kind of want, I think in this dialogue, obviously would look forward to Advice Art Waikato, all of the other significant groups that would advise us around our strategic approach. And I see this very much in the context of the other funding issues that we are facing in this area, and obviously making sure that the centre fits in. I've raised the issue. And I also want to stress absolutely that I'm a strong supporter of the university, the wonderful work they're doing on the excellent medical school proposal, the development of Tauranga campus, which actually is of benefit to Hamilton too, if you think that through, and the number of us who enjoy the beautiful campus for walks and recreation. And also I did pick up community access to other facilities, so I get that, I totally get that. However, my ongoing concern, and I am perhaps a little concerned at the somewhat glacial pace, because I raised this 1 year ago, and like the cheese ads, good things take time, but it seems to me that as a council, what I'm looking forward is that we, as we move forward, we analyse obviously all of our, and I use this word sponsorship in the loose sense, that where council ratepayer funding is involved, we have a duty to our ratepayers for them to see where their rates are going. So, for example, at the fantastic Rototuna Centre, which will be the Mayor and others will be opening, will be going along to the opening fairly soon, there will be no ambiguity whatsoever that this was a partnership project, and that the people in the North East and Hamilton generally will recognise that while the centre is run by a different body, if you like, it is still a council-related facility where their rates are being channelled to facilitate the wonderful events and activities there. Same obviously with the hopefully the new theatre in Victoria Street, which is a partnership, be independently run and get all that, no problem. And I think in the case, this is a good example where, as I said before, I just go there from time to the Performing Arts Centre at the university, and if I was an ordinary resident, I wouldn't have a clue that my council, my good council, has spent $4.25 million of my rating, rates that I contribute to that wonderful facility. I would look along a list of sponsors, and we are sort of there, I think, with Waikato District Council, and there'd be there's no real acknowledgement that there was a 1/5 capital contribution. That's significant. 20% capital contribution is significant. So as a ratepayer, I wouldn't have any clue of that. I certainly wouldn't have any real idea that every year there's a 25% grant towards the operational aspects relating to community use. And what I'm looking for from us as a team and our staff is perhaps a good dialogue in that space. So moving forward, when we do sign contracts with different groups and agencies, that we are focused from a communication point of view for our good ratepayers who in the end foot the bill. They foot the bill, obviously, that they do see where their money is going. And don't misperceive that. This is a very positive contribution. I'm not at all critical of the Performing Arts Centre. It's a wonderful facility. I do think the university could have done a little better around the music school, really. I think their information and their communication could have been better, but that's as it is. So I move that resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Pascoe. Sorry, first of all, Councillor James has seconded. Did you want to say anything? No. Thank you, Councillor Pascoe.
I'm confused with this motion. First of all, it uses the word sponsorship when it's a grant. And I'm not sure whether it means sponsorship issues or grant issues, whether we're talking about whether we would not necessarily confine the discussion at the elected members' briefing to the Gallagher Performing Arts Centre, that we might extend it also to the Meteor and to Clarence Street and so forth. So if I was a member of staff, I think I'd have some difficulty coming to grips with what B actually means in terms of getting a direction from council about what the instruction clearly is.
Would if we said grant and sponsorship issues, it's not just about the...
It's not a grant, it's a
contract issues.
Well, it's a...
Okay, so Helen's got an idea to assist.
And you know, this is not just about at all the university Performing Arts Centre. It's the broader narrative, if you like.
Well, point of order. This is about the community. This is exactly Martin. This is, you've gone off track. This is, the item is Gallagher Academy of Performing Arts Annual Report 2016. That's what the item is.
Through the chair and the chair can rule this in or out. Doesn't stop me to add, if you like, a further piece of work. All I'm asking for is that there's a topic in one of our workshops where we, as a team, generally have a general discussion around, you know, contract and sponsorship. Okay?
So if I can,
if I can
cut through this to try and get a sense of direction, we understand. And I'm coming to your point of order, but we understand what your intent is to do here. I don't think we necessarily, I'll ask staff, we don't necessarily need a motion to pick up the sponsorship and grant type issues at an update, do we? But we can record that in the minutes and in action and ensure through the CE that this happens. Yes. Did you heard what I said?
The only person I employ, he has just said yes. Person I employ has just said yes, I'll just remove B, and I'm happy still to move receive the report.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Leary.
I was just going to ask if he was looking for a policy discussion.
I think so, but I think it's the with you know it. My intent here is it's the broader narrative, because as we move through our long-term plan, there's going to be a number of things that we will not do operationally, but we will direct some funding for other people to do. And the only intent is to look at that whole policy of how effective we are in communicating to our ratepayers.
So I think outside of this meeting, you can work closely with staff to nut that out.
Happy to do that.
And we won't hold ourselves up here. So we're going back just to the report be received. Is there anybody else who wants to speak to it? It's pretty straightforward. All right, we'll go to the vote then, please. Thank you.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, so now that moves us on to item 8, which is the Meteor Theatre Annual Report. Welcome to our guests. And thank you for your patience in waiting for us. Appreciate that.
Kia ora, councillors. Similar kind of process as to our last item. It's my pleasure to introduce you a couple of members of the trust of One Victoria Trust. So we've got Aaron Chisholm, who is the chair, and Adrian Clothier, who is a trustee. Just a point of kind of note, I guess, from a staff perspective, when we gifted, we had the deed of gift with One Victoria Trust for the building and 3 years of grant, one for operational and then a couple to assist with the capital works. I would see that the Trust has done a phenomenal job in meeting their KPIs, and the requirement for an annual report has kind of ceased as they've done their what they've agreed to do in terms of that contract. But I'll give these guys the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Right. Because the report was actually deferred, what I'm actually going to do is, the report is nice and solid, but I'm going to put some updates to the report. So the report was submitted on 12th of June. In it talks about the Capital Works project being underway and everything. So I'll just give you some conclusions, really. So the Capital Works project is now complete. The only item we couldn't actually fit into the budget, which is within that report, was carpeting the foyer, which we will hope to do at some stage in the future. We finished nominally over budget. There were a few extra electrical costs that literally appeared in the last week. So as far as the budget's concerned, we're $3,807 in the red. I can now confirm that the venue is now alive with activity. We started with One Hell of a Fight, which I think many of you attended. This is a great Hamilton story, and it was actually very well received, and we thought it was a great opportunity to actually showcase what the Meteor can now do. We're very happy with the calibre of the program since then, and the variety of the program as well. One Hell of a Fight is starting return season this week, and it runs till the 19th of August, for those of you who didn't see it. We also have another show telling a Hamilton story in September. It's She Danced on a Friday, the birth and death of Marjorie Hopegood. And a lot of the story we've been talking about with the Meteor is actually in providing a place to tell some Hamilton stories. So I'm personally quite excited that that's continuing. We're still on target to have an occupancy rate of 80%. This is actually based on the days available for us this year, so obviously excluding the time when the works were done. We're in full support of the proposed new theatre location. We're looking forward to being an important contributor to what we feel will become Hamilton's Arts Precinct. It's a beautiful idea. I'd like to thank the council and the previous council for believing in us, for giving us the opportunity to contribute to the cultural health of the city. With the works complete, all of our KPIs achieved, I'm happy to report that we have met and in every way exceeded the terms of the gift. And Adrian's got a couple of words as well.
Thank you very much.
I'm just speaking from a slightly more sort of personal point of view of feeling about the whole project. So last week at our Meteor trustee meeting, it came to our attention that in a couple of weeks, several of us of the founding trustees of this project will have been with it for 4 years. And I think that all of us would give thanks to our families and our workplaces, our friends and our supporters for getting us here today. Although I know that many of you will miss the charisma and elegant grace of Charlotte Isaac, who was not able to be here today, it is a proud moment for Aaron and I to be able to present this final report of the 3-year journey with Council of the gifting of this special building to this community trust. But the relationship between Council and the Meteor does not end here. Our trustees are fully aware of the long-term outcomes of this project. This theatre is here for our children, the youth, and all the creative talent within the city. Unfortunately, I believe there is not a theatre in the world that can work a sustainable model, but this is not a facility for profit making. This theatre provides a product that is priceless.
This is a community gift for all that are drawn to hear and present our stories of our lives. We see building and economic growth happening all around us in the city. We hear about innovative and creative thinkers. We are building our city with an eye on the future. But life is not all work and no play, and we firmly believe that this theatre, as well as all the other cultural activities that this city must continue to offer, is the way to a full and balanced life for us now and for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're taking questions at this point in time. Councillor Mallett.
Thank you, Paula. Just Andy, you said, just in terms of our contractual obligations to the trust, what your little speech just, little discussion before, is completely severed, is it? That's.
So my understanding of the contract was that the completion of the capital works was the fulfilment of the obligations that council put on the trust to prove that it could do what it said it could do. So yes.
So the consequence of that is there is a magnificent community trust that owns this great building and is going to operate out of there. They are just another non-council entity in the city. Is that what you're saying?
I guess picking up a little bit of what Councillor Gallagher was saying before, we do still have a relationship with the theatre, both from the thinking about the cultural well-being of our residents. So there's that kind of partnership,
and the same,
but also a grant. There is a grant relationship through our multi-year grant currently.
And that's a confirmed commitment, or the trust can apply like anyone else can,
Yes.
A lot of entities can apply to that.
So the current multi-year grant goes up until 30th of June next year, in line with our 10-year plan.
Say that again, sorry?
So our current round of grants, our multi-year grants, goes till the 30th of June, in line with our 10-year plan timeframes.
So One Victoria can apply to that?
So they currently have
an
agreement there.
Cool, great.
Then we will open for the next 3-year rounds sometime between now and the end of the year, in which they will be welcome to apply, because our multi-year grant currently is around our community infrastructure, so our gathering spaces, which totally fits with the theatres and the roles that they do within the community.
Okay, so legally, the One Victoria Trust now stands on its own legs, and the support of its trustees and its community support, like any other non-for-profit, All right, well, fantastic. That's great. Thank you. Congratulations.
Councillor Pascoe.
Thanks, and thanks, Aaron and Adrian, for the work that you and the Trust have done over the last 4 years. It's certainly been a journey, but it's been one that has been very, very admirable. Can I just confirm, and following on from Councillor Mallett's questions, we have now, in terms of the deed of gift, we have now completed all of the financial obligations that we had in that deed of gift, which I think was signed in 2013, to provide that funding, which was conditional on getting the earthquake strengthening done and so forth.
That's correct. The 225 that was given as part of that gift has been transferred from us to the Trust on the completion of the works that they've done.
Does the deed of gift require the Trust to provide annual financial statements to Council, or has it, and will it going forward? I ask that because there's no financial statements included in this report.
If I can answer that through the chair, the deed of gift did require annual statements for the period up until the completion of the works, and from this point on they're not required under the terms of the deed. The deed is effectively completed in terms of the obligations on behalf of the One Victoria Trust and Council.
But to date, we have not seen any financial statements.
We have had previous statements from the Trust, but this year's, I can't answer the comment on a statement for this current financial year.
So that has come to staff as part of the reporting requirements, yes.
But not to Council?
No, we have not.
Okay. I'm not being inquisitorial here. I guess that follows on with my next question is, You know, quite clearly the financial statements will indicate whether or not the organisation is viable and what its financial strength is for the potential ups and downs that will happen with profitable shows and unprofitable shows going forward. My question then is, what can the city provide in terms of, you know, I mean, the model is good, it's proven that it works, short of us providing, you know, more money, which of course is often the easy way out. What can the city do to help maintain, preserve and strengthen your governance model? Because, you know, and I say this from a selfish point of view, that if your model works, then it's going to be easy for us to convince other groups, other arts or sports groups in the city to replicate that model going forward. And I say that also because there's a lot of volunteer work that goes into maintaining and ensuring the success of the model.
The thing about a theatre, and especially a grassroots theatre, which essentially we are, is around the world you will not find a sustainable theatre that's actually of the size that we are that can't survive without grants and sponsorship. So of course there is the money, but the partnerships that we're actually building with council, with organisations like H3 with the H Live, so we're featuring in all of their stuff recently, and it's great, it's just more profile. And I guess really just where possible, the council helping tell our story is probably the most significant thing you're doing. We definitely need money to continue to operate, but in the current financial year, we're perfectly viable. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so you're aware that support is here, not just financial support, and that may be harder to get than that support that's also necessary to maintain, you know, the very, very good model that you've built up over the 4 years.
Yeah, I talked about it on our open function, and we wouldn't be where we are now without the support of people like Andy and Sean Murray. So we very much value the expertise that they've brought to conversations when we've had difficult questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a question myself, if I might, just following on from that, because I think what I heard you say is that financially for this upcoming year, you're fine. We've discharged our responsibilities on the deed, and looking forward down this annual year, you're fine. But you've clearly said that no theatre of this type and size is self-sustaining going on. So we're always going to need, is this what you're saying, that we're always going to need a relationship with you, whether it's in kind services with a value to them, or whether at different points in time it is operational support or something of that nature. We are needing to retain that openness as a council to what you might need. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I believe so. I think we're extremely efficient with our operation and the way that we are funded and the results that we give to our community, which is also your community. And I feel that especially the purely cultural activities we have, like things like One Hell of a Fight, which really it raised a lot of eyebrows with people when councillors and stuff came, and those cultural contributions to the city, I feel we should be delivering them in partnership with the council, because it's part of the council's responsibility as such to foster not only roading but arts.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that, because what I haven't heard you say is, you know, great, we're on our feet, thanks, and so long. What you're saying is, great, we're on our feet, thank you very much for that. We have to work together going forward to make this a success, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go into the debate. It's only to receive the report. I'm happy to move that it be received. Councillor O'Leary will second that, and we'll take some debate. I'll just say, as a mover, I'm not going to say very much at all. Just to note that you have, in fact, done an excellent job of getting from a pretty dire situation in terms of that theatre to a splendid result, which we'll all be proud of going forward. So, but I do acknowledge how hard it's been for you in your various efforts to fundraise. I've been to 1 or 2 quizzes. I've made a cake. I bought a brick. Looking forward to seeing my brick there. But I think it's only testimony to the fact that you've really had to use every resource available, to draw money in from the community, and you've been very creative about that. So I'll just say to council, it does concern me when we shouldn't sit there, councillors, and say, great, we've done a great job, we've put them on their feet, they put themselves on their feet, now we can just walk away and pretend that it's all going to survive happily ever after, because I think we need to keep in that space, in that conversation, supporting the performing arts, which quite clearly always need the support going forward. It's me. Councillor Casson.
Yes, thank you, Aaron and Adrian, and also Charlotte. Hamilton need people like you, really do. And I was lucky enough to go along to your grand reopening on the 21st of July, I think it was. Such a fantastic night, and Hamilton has some really talented people. I particularly enjoyed like Shakespeare with the marshmallows in the mouth. That was extremely funny. And the foul-mouthed comedian Jan-Marie Frannicevic, she was fantastic. I'd like to have her at like a stag party. She'd be great. Also, my wife and I are going to be regular goers to the Meteor now that it's reopened. And I think one of the first ones we're going to see, the wife wants to go see the Vagina Monologues. But we're going across to see that, so it's going to be great. Thank you very much.
Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you. Obviously, congratulations to the whole team for the wonderful work you've done, and this obviously is a celebration, in my view, of a journey. I particularly want to acknowledge 2 of my council colleagues who I believe have played quite an influential role, and one, of course, is Councillor Rob Pascoe for his work, as I understand, around governance and around some of his skill set, and thank you for that, Rob, and also Angela O'Leary for her advocacy and passion. In your team, I want to thank Alec Forbes, who took me for a cup of tea one day, packaged the message for a very average councillor of average IQ, explained it in terms that I could understand, and then I got it. And I think that's crucial, that I think there are a number of us who perhaps didn't quite get it, and then we did. And I think, obviously, the significance of this is way beyond just the bricks and mortar and the work of the Meteor. This is about a critical component of our central city CBD arts precinct river plan. And it's really interesting to note that our competitor city or complementary city, Tauranga, is starting quite a bit of dialogue and a lot of space, because I think they may start to get how critical the performing arts are and culture and arts are to the city's economy, etc. And lest we get too carried away with council's kindness to the cultural sector, we've been very kind, correctly very kind, and worked with sporting fraternities. So all I'm wanting is I want an evenness of treatment. And this council over many years, colleagues, has invested millions and millions into creating correctly a very good sporting infrastructure in this city. I want the same kind of passion to come around our performing arts and our artistic space as well. So, without further ado, thank you so much, and we do look forward to you next year through our LTP process to be making a submission, not just initially for the Meteor, but for the broader arts and culture space. Any help you can give to keep this council convinced that the river plan is a critical component, that anything we can do to really focus on that new cultural precinct as a component, because I would argue from an economic point of view, what you are doing there, what the Hamilton Theatre is doing, what the museum is doing, and other groups in our city will be critical to attracting people to live in this city, and very importantly to retain them in this city. This is, in my view, colleagues, a quantum leap where Hamilton's in a transition from just being, dare I say it, a very nice provincial town to truly becoming a metro centre up there with Wellington, Dunedin, Christchurch, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just addressing your comment around your concern about any member around the table thinking that we would walk away, I can assure you that I would never walk away from the arts, and I think I've proven that since the day I started on council. No, I remember the day that we made this happen, and I remember the motion that I moved, seconded by Councillor McPherson, and I kind of held my breath through that debate. No. He knows a winner when he sees it, and so do I. And I believed in you guys then, and I was sitting in that chair where Councillor Bunting is, and I remember standing up and saying there is no doubt in my mind that you're going to annihilate this project, and you did. And so just like a really proud parent, it is time to let you go. And that doesn't mean anything other than actually you've achieved tremendous success. And I use, in this chamber, I use many debate points and use the meteor and what you've achieved as a model for true partnership. And I know that you've celebrated, but honestly, from the deepest part of my heart, I thank you and I applaud what you've done. Well done.
Oh, sorry, that was so good, Angela. I forgot what I was doing next. Because we can tell you're always very passionate about that, genuinely. Councillor Henry.
Thank you so much. I don't even know how, awesome words spoken, and I probably won't do that any justice, but I was at a reopening as well, and I'm sort of a newbie to arts, or come back again to arts, and what I just loved was your, just over the little bit that I've heard over the last 8 months, your creativeness of getting a sponsorship, of getting support from the community and everything. You're an amazing example for other groups as well, to do something like that, to step in and just like Councillor O'Leary said, or everybody else, that we're not leaving you on your own, and we're supporting you, carry on supporting you in different ways. And I just think it's just, I think other groups can look at you and say, well, if they can do it, we can do it too. So well done, thank you so much. And we're looking forward to lots more wonderful plays. Thank you.
Thank you. I think all that could have been said has been said. So congratulations once again, and we're going to take the vote. Just to receive the report, so it's nothing quite as exciting as a few years ago when we were really doing the works. Is anybody not pressed yet? Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you again to the Trust and all of you who support the creative arts in Hamilton. Thank you. Brilliant. Now, councillors, we're going to go on to item 9. And this is around community leases and community facilities. And I think it'd be important to take, we don't want to go through every organisation bit by bit, every project bit by bit, every lease bit by bit, because that could take a while, and I'm assuming that you have all read the item. So if Andy, you want to go over it, the pertinent points, and then we've got quite a lot to go through in terms of recommendations.
Cool. Kia ora, councillors. So I guess this is a little bit of a journey that we kind of sit here with these particular 5 leases. We have spoken as the last council, and there's been conversations with the community for a couple of years around us transitioning as staff from booking individual spaces to the community on an hourly basis to giving a greater ownership model to community groups for them to be able to feel the sense of ownership within the space and to encourage increased participation. Some of our facilities are well used and currently have a high level of engagement, but there's still a sense that our community, if they aren't restricted by us doing the booking, that they'll be able to flourish further. This is in line with our community occupancy policy. So in terms of a building management system, we still have the ownership of and the responsibility of the maintenance of the buildings. This really does talk about what goes on within the buildings. So this recommendation is for 6 leases for 4 of our buildings. So there's two buildings that are kind of split, and then there's 2 buildings that are sole lease. And I'm happy to answer any particular questions, but yeah, so thank you.
Councillors, I will take the recommendation. We had a discussion about this the other day and felt it would probably be useful to take the recommendation in parts as required. So, because as you can see, it is pretty lengthy over pages 37 and 38. But we'll go through the questions, and you can direct your question to any of those leases at this point in time. And if necessary, we can break into a chunk. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andy, I was just a little unclear on which organisations were going to be the anchor tenant. So was it in Enderley Park? Who was that?
So currently Enderley Park, the south end, there's about 315 squares,
yep.
Which Raukura Haura have sole lease of, and the north end of the building is currently managed by us. So Hamilton Multicultural Services Trust would take over the lease of that. So they would both have their own separate space, but they would be in conversation around how that space is utilised.
Okay, so effectively no lead anchor on that one?
Two separate, and
two separate,
similar with Citizens Advice and Waikato Dance Performance at the old St Peter's.
Yeah.
They'd have their own separate space, but they would be, so we'd have 2 leases for the one building, essentially.
Okay, and what about Fairfield Park Hall then, is that?
So that would, Te Whare o Te Ata would have the entire space, outside of the public changing rooms, which still maintained as a parks asset, and then Shinjukai Karate Do would be the sole lease at Frankton Railway Institute.
Okay, so only other question I had was with the Frankton Hall. In the plans for Frankton, because this is in our heritage area, our plan is to review the role and function of that hall. And another action in the plan is a museum, so it actually could serve as a future museum. So did you take that into account? Because this is extending their lease to 2020, but in the plan we are wanting to look at it. We were supposed to be looking at the role and function of the Heritage Hall by 2019. It's extending it to 2023.
23.
Yeah.
Yes. So definitely was part of the thinking, talking with our district plan team who hold the Frankton plan. There was the sense that work would take a little bit of time. We need to, so Frankton Railway Institute is on Railway Park, which is currently classified as a sports reserve. So there's some work that would need to do in terms of changing the classification if we were going to change the overall use of the building. So 5 years was a little bit of gives commitment to what goes on currently, but also gives us that space to do that work. If council wanted, we could reduce the timing of that, but I guess the conversations with staff is that we're not at the push go point yet, and rather than kind of saying that we are, and then kind of extending year by year, we kind of have started at that 5 year to give time for that project.
So, we're not going to have any access for 6 years.
All of our community occupancy leases do have clauses within them that can kind of see a shortening of the lease if things were to change. But I mean, if we are open, I guess, in terms of that term, that timing, if council thought that it was better to be a shortened space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to die in a ditch over it, but I would prefer it to be a 2 year, just to line it up with LTP and not close the door. But again, if you're saying, look, you know, there is an option in a lease to, you know, maybe change the direction in the future. I just don't want to lose an opportunity, because actually that particular action was a 1 to 3 year. So we should have, you know, there should be something on the horizon, and it's really
and I guess
desktop work.
The first part of that is that a conservation plan has been done over the last year. So thinking about the overall use of that beautiful historic asset, we've done that work in terms of ensuring, okay, how do we ensure that the building maintains links to the heritage and is able to be used going forward. So there hasn't been silent on that space, but that has taken a chunk of time, which then goes into the community conversations around what's the ultimate dream for that space.
If we try to get out of a community lease like this, say even by 12 months, is there a financial consequence to us?
I don't have that at my fingertips. Sorry, I can find.
Okay. I'd probably, Madam Chair, just indicate that I'd test with my colleagues to extend that by 2 years rather than 5, but as I said, not dying in a ditch over it. Okay, sure.
Okay, well, you've given notice that you're considering that, so we'll get to that if after the questions. Like I think Dave's indicating, and he's next. There might be more to come. Councillor McPherson.
Yeah, I just want to work through some of them, but I think Angela's raised some important points. If we're going to be doing work, in fact, are overdue for doing work in that area, 5-year lease is definitely too long. So I want to know from staff when they could complete, when the work was supposed to be completed by, that Angela has referred to in a couple of areas, and whether staff can actually complete it by then, and how long therefore the lease would need to be, extension would need to be, to allow that length of time and no more until it comes back here. I don't know whether Helen or Andy can answer that.
It's part of the CC, the Hamilton, the Frankton plan. So there'll be a discussion on that in terms of the staging at the briefing on the 22nd. But if you're wanting to know today, I can look and see when it's currently scheduled. But otherwise, it is scheduled to be discussed at a briefing.
When's it scheduled to?
22nd of August.
That 1 to 3 years that Angela mentioned up?
Well, that would have been from, it would have been like now. So that's one of the, it is, that discussion will be around dates that are currently in action plans or in strategic plans. The work, we are not ready to go, so we're not meeting those dates currently.
But it's 2019. It's to be completed by 2019.
So those 3 years is,
Okay, so we're in the first year of the 3 years, just finished the first year of the 3.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks. Andy, I've got a concern. There's 2 halls in this that have in the past been leasable by community organisations, public, whatever. Are they both being taken out of that? That's Frankton Railway and Fairfield Hall. Are they both taken out of the play as far as community leasing goes because of the lease that we're proposing for the community organisations?
No. So Fairfield Hall, Te Whare o Te Ata is recommended there because of their commitment to a similar model of practice that we've had. So we've currently got 16 independent users of that hall for the range of kind of activity, and Te Whare o Te Ata want to grow that. So the hall stays as part of our community infrastructure, but Te Whare o Te Ata would manage the booking and manage the internal use. Okay. Frankton is...
Sorry, can we just explore that one a little bit and come back to Frankton? Is that, because personally I can see some value in that model, but that didn't seem to be explained in here, but maybe I missed it. Is that they would be... I see continue to hire out to... It's an ACT party meeting. There were 3 of them in the picture.
French is a second language. I thought I'd turned everything down.
So for a group in the community out there that want to use a hall, they'd see no change except going to a different place to make the booking?
That's correct.
And pricing?
I guess part of this process does give the pricing part to Te Whare o Te Ata. We would, as part of our expected time frame is that if the leases get passed today, work will happen in the transition of both who are current users and what their current time slots are, what potential bookings we use to what they could use. The team at Te Whare o Te Ata are aware of what our current prices are, and they're aware that a radical change to something significantly higher would have impact, and so that would be part of the transition thing.
But have we not written that into the lease? Our understand, you're saying, well, they know what we expect, sort of thing, but is there anything written?
So leases haven't been drafted up, so they would be done post, leases being, or recommendations being given. So that would be work still to go. Our current fees and charges is particularly light. They're particularly cheap. And when you compare to other community facilities that are run by the community, there is a price differential there. I would anticipate that there would be a pricing change, but I would also, having had conversations with the management at Te Whare o Te Ata, they're aware that they have to negotiate that in a way that's not going to see people get upset and lose the ability to be able to use the space. So that's part of the transition period from now until 1 July, in which we are saying the leases to take effect.
So Te Whare o Te Ata, if the leases were increased to a more realistic level, they would accrue all of the benefit of that because their lease is fixed now, and any increase they would get, rather than us having a set before we give it to them, the realistic lease.
The community occupancy policy talks about a price on footprint. So it doesn't talk about the income that might be generated from a particular facility. So our current models across our portfolio don't take into account what a group might be able to earn. So some of the figures would be different, yes. Their income would be higher as a result of charging more if they were to continue to keep the community on board and so grow that rather than kind of turn people away.
So the price on footprint, if that was a bit of bare land the Fairfield Hall was on that Te Whare o Te Ata was leasing, would they be paying the same? Both of them are at it.
So Helen's going to provide some response.
So they could fill a telephone booth.
Councillor McPherson, Helen would like to respond.
Just also in terms of the charges, because the lessee will also have, my understanding, Andy's responsibility for the utilities, so the cleaning and maintenance of the building. So there'll be some cost recovery built into that. But also within those, the lessee agreements, the responsibilities will also be around usage. So, there'll be some expectation on usage. So they're going to have to weigh up the cost against usage.
Hasn't all this stuff been worked out before you go and lease it?
That's what we're working through, yes, in terms of putting the leases together. But why is it coming to us before that's been worked out? I mean, I like the way you're going on that one, I think, but it's not been worked out. We don't really know what we're talking about as an end result here.
Sorry, can you reframe your question for me, Councillor?
Why the hell haven't you worked it out before you brought it here, Andy? I mean, these figures you're telling us that you're going to go and negotiate with them.
No, sorry, what I'm saying is they will have, the lessee will have responsibility for utilities. So, of course, their fees, will cover their costs. So when we're talking about profit, there's not going to be, it'll be covering the cost of the service.
Well, you're answering something different from what Andy said, as far as I'm concerned, and neither of those figures are worked out. You're saying this is the principle we're going to follow, but you don't know what charges they might increase to. You don't know what. You're not telling us what costs they might have to cover. I mean, and I'm supportive of this thing, and I'm getting frustrated hearing what I'm hearing now.
So,
Okay.
Councillor, in terms of your first question around if it was bare land, the occupancy policy has different pricing schedules associated with land versus land and building. So the charges that are in this report are related to the footprint of the building, and the buildings have different levels of how they've been rated. So a building that is celebrating age, for instance, has a greater dollar per square metre than Enderley Park or Fairfield. So the policy is really clear in terms of what those are, and then we add council's 87.5% subsidy as part of that policy. In terms
I'll debate whether that's very clear, but we can come back to that afterwards.
And then in terms of, I guess, picking up Helen's response there, Whare o Te Ata, if they were to get the lease at Fairfield Park Hall, they would manage the activity that takes place, so they're booking of community use, possibly using it for their own purposes as well, for their own activity. They will be responsible for the utilities, which is electricity, gas, the cleaning, security might need.
Yeah, let's look at it, break it down a little bit. If Whare o Te Ata went in to book that building, the Fairfield Hall, just across the park from where they are now, for half a day, what would they pay now to us?
The current cost is, I think, around the $7.20 per hour mark.
I see what you mean about it being very cheap, but I'm just trying to work out, you see, they wouldn't have to pay them, once they get the lease, they could use it the entire time, potentially, for their own activities.
The negotiation that's happened to this point is that Whare o Te Ata are committed to wider community use. And so the recommendation...
Andy, what does that mean, committed to wider community use? Is there, like, at least with the university when they came here, there was a minimum 25% of community use?
Yeah, so I guess the way that this process works from a community occupancy point of view is if council would like to give Whare o Te Ata a lease of Fairfield Park Hall, we will then do the contract that is associated with that. So in the sense of the legal document is framed up after this meeting, and which would have...
And that's my problem, because we don't even know what's going to be in the legal document. And you're asking me as a councillor to approve you going away and negotiating and completing the negotiations, not bringing it back here. I don't like that. I want to know what I'm agreeing, the end result of what I'm agreeing to.
So you would be agreeing to Whare o Te Ata having Fairfield Park as a sole lease for
which means that the community could be shut out. That's because it doesn't say anything else.
And so as direction from you, we would ensure that there would be some metrics. So
There's nothing in the resolution that says that. It just says that it talks about the area, the term, and the rent. That's all, not about the use.
Councillor McPherson, can I just see if I can be helpful? I don't know if I can actually, but are you hoping that in the contracts we will see provision of community use, wider community use, than the person to whom you've got the lease with? You want to see the wording that ensures that the community, wider community...
Not the wording, the heads of agreement, if you like, because I know when we put money into the Performing Arts Centre at the university, we had a clause in there before we signed anything up here, 25% or whatever must be for community use, and there must be a differential charge between community and commercial and a couple of things like that. Okay. And those sort of principles were enshrined in what the council agreed to before it passed the resolution. And so my concern wouldn't be over an office space, but these are community halls that have been available to the public in the past.
So you're trying to create a protective element so that you
for lease the community.
Yes, that's right. So Andy, do you understand that now, where it's coming from?
Absolutely. And my recommendation to council is, because of the application that I've seen, which has committed to the ongoing use of community. We had a couple of applications to this space. One was for exclusive use where the community would no longer get to use the facility, and Whare o Te Ata's, which in their application have said that that is what they're going to use the hall for. And so my recommendation does come to council trusting that we will work in the legal contracts to ensure that the community still has access to a really important resource within the neighbourhood.
Yeah, lots of words there, but not anything definite. So I'll come back to that in debate, because I'm really unhappy about having nothing definite and just the word trust was used there, and I trust that particular group as well. But what if something goes wrong? Where's the fallback? We don't have it.
I think we understand that now. So let's. I think
okay, so going on to the Frankton Railway Hall with the.
David, just was wondering if in that respect, because I think what we'll do is we'll take all the questions, because we're getting very close to needing a break and lunch and all that. Then we'll come back for the debate. But in that respect, maybe we're approving the development of rather than the actual product. We might think about that while you're carrying on, if that's okay.
I think that's a good point, Madam Chair. Yeah, very much so. Just the Frankton Railway Hall, that's also been bookable by the public. I'm not sure what state it's been in some of the time, or whether it's had in it. It didn't even have chairs when we used it for a meeting once. But the Shinjokai Karate Do Incorporated, I'm sure I didn't pronounce that right, but if they're using that, setting it up as some sort of gym for their martial arts form, which sounds like what you'd want a hall for if you were in martial arts, what sort of use would the community have there?
So Shinjukai have been in Frankton since 2012, so they've got a 5-year history of being the sole lease holder. So that's been passed by council a couple of times. They do rent the hall out to other light recreation spaces. So there's other martial arts groups, there's self-defence groups. So there is community access still, but again, it's through them. So Shinjukai have been there since 2012. We haven't managed the booking of that space since the 2011-2012 year.
So for about $25 a week, is that right? 50, yeah, about $25 a week. They're able to lease that out to other groups as well. Do we know, have we seen their cash flow? Do we know what income they get? I mean,
I don't have the absolute figure of what they charge out, but yes, we've seen annual accounts as part of our community occupancy agreements, that comes through. So
are they getting more back from their subleasing, if you can call it that, than they're paying us?
I would need to check that, but they definitely are not making a lot of money off their hireage.
Okay, I had one other query related to different group, but 2A on page 37, Rokura Haora. Why are you charging them a community rate when they are 100% funded by DHB health sector contracts and pay commercial leases wherever else they operate, which is some other places?
Again, the leases that we currently have are in alignment with our community occupancy policy. They are, by the definition of the community occupancy policy, a community group, and therefore they are entitled to the subsidies that are afforded in that policy.
Have you considered the fact that they get funded by the DHB at the same level that other health agencies do, and that their provision, there's no community activities? According to their website, they provide addiction services, community health services, dental services, medical clinics and mental health services, and that those are all funded under DHB contracts.
They also have whānau ora support workers, they have a few, but in answer to your question, the sustainability or the success of a community organisation, and therefore how much money they earn, that doesn't disqualify them from being, under our definitions, a community group.
Except that with them and the other group, the Multicultural Services Trust, using it there, there's now, my understanding, no room for anyone else to operate from there, because they've taken up the remaining You said the southern 315 squares.
Yep, so again, the conversations to date with the Multicultural Services Trust is that there will be some activity, some overflow from the settlement centre that's exists in Boundary Road. So they will do some English language classes. Their schedule of works still allows for other community use. They will, if again council recommends a lease to them, they will begin in earnest the conversations with the community about what the hours look like. They've already begun conversations with...
You're talking about the Multicultural Services Trust, but I was asking about Rokura Haora.
So I guess both in partnership, thinking of the building, both are very aware that Enderley Park Community Centre exists as an asset or a resource for the Enderley community, and both of them have articulated in this application process a commitment to the local community and how the local community can continue to access the building and meet some of their needs for both gathering but also for some of their wider needs and concerns.
But if either of those organisations or both of them expanded to fill the available space for their own activities and services, there wouldn't be room there for anyone else to go in, would there?
So
what protections are you thinking of putting in to make them room?
So the north end is probably the most likely for community use. So the north end has the squash courts, the gym upstairs, the lounge, kitchen area. The Hamilton Multicultural Services Trust do have some programs, and they will use upstairs for office space for some of their staff. They'll use some of the storage areas. They'll have a receipting or a reception area. The conversations, I guess, around the transition from this point until the 30th of June is to figure out some of those logistics.
But you're giving them a 5-year lease.
10 years.
10.
Yep.
Sorry, those 2 years.
Yep. Both organisations are sustainable. Both organisations have community benefit in mind. Both those organisations have displayed a commitment to both the local community and the wider community. So, from a staff perspective, we are willing to enter into that partnership of how to best utilise one of our buildings for community use and community benefit.
Yeah, but with asking us to agree to the lease without any guarantees for level of wider community use.
So I think that
same point.
Yeah, it is the same point. So let's take the questions from everyone else as well, and then let that be the staff should have clearly heard what you're saying, and we'll do some work on that while we have our lunch.
Well, that's right. I haven't quite finished on that though.
Okay. Have you got to do it?
Take the crown and most questions from me to him now.
No.
That's because Gary doesn't understand much about community. That's why he doesn't ask so many questions.
So you've got some other questions?
Yes. The rate we're talking about, which is 12 cents a metre per week, or $6 roughly, that's incredibly cheap, much less than 12.5% of a standard rental of a building, isn't it?
So again, the prices are determined by our community occupancy policy. Enderley Park has a rental rate of $50 per square metre, and then the 87.5% subsidy is applied to that.
$50 per square metre compared with CBD $250 per square metre going rate at the moment. I mean, when was that? I appreciate at some stage it may have been that, but I think rentals have changed.
So community occupancy policy is due for review early 2018, so within this financial year, and I guess that would be a great opportunity for councillors to confirm whether this is the right approach for us as a council.
Well, not necessarily arguing about the approach, I'm arguing about your base level that's being used at the moment. So is it possible, a few months into a 10-year lease, that price could change without we have the authority under the contract to do that?
The community occupancy policy talks about annual looking at what the charges are. So there is it's not a compulsory market rental approach, but each year there is the opportunity to do that piece of work, which is independently done. So it's not just staff going, this is what it's worth. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Paula. Look, I've got the same concern about Raukura Hauora, and I just can't see how ratepayers can be subsidising a taxpayer-funded organisation that of this size that has 20,000 clients throughout the Waikato, and how can that possibly be considered a community group in the same breath as these other 5 organisations?
There is definitely a scale difference, but they are working for our Tainui people. So in terms of Raukura are committed to Enderley, they're committed to the local residents, both from a health perspective in terms of giving people access to their services, but also their wider community programs do talk about some of that stuff that Councillor McPherson mentioned in terms of not just physical health, but mental health and other spaces. Yes, they are a big player in this space, but that doesn't mean that they don't equally meet the bill of working towards our community and working for the benefit of our community.
Well, my concern is that we're doing our ratepayers an injustice by allowing this organisation to get such a subsidy.
Okay, so
again, sorry, my recommendations come from our community occupancy policy, which is a council policy, which means that this particular organisation is within the remit of our policy.
Yeah, so we'll stick to the questions, but I guess there are 2 things, these current leases, and there is the community occupancy policy, which Helen, we would deal with how, where.
Oh, sorry, you go then.
No, you go.
Well, my next question would be, I presume we have the discretion here then to refuse this lease?
Absolutely. All leases within the community occupancy policy are approved by council, so that is, yeah.
But what Andy's saying, they do currently meet our criteria, and then Paul is saying it would, we'd have to review the policy to change that, because currently they meet the criteria.
Well, it needs a massive review. It certainly needs a review if they're slipping into this. It's just completely wrong.
Okay, so we'll save that for debate. We're just trying to get the process. So if we were to have an appetite to change the community occupancy policy, when and where could that happen?
So Andy, you're saying it's due for review in 2018?
Yes,
so
yep.
First next year.
Yeah, so if council wanted to look at that earlier, we'd need to bring it forward earlier.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a useful piece of information. Jeff, have you got some further questions?
No, I'll come back to it. Thanks, in debate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henry?
Madam Chair. I've got, with the Waikato Dance Performance Trust, that's run by the Drury Lane Dance Academy, is that right? Or dance studio, whatever it's called. Yeah, now that is a commercial entity, isn't it? Yeah, because I paid a lot of money to Drury Lane over quite a number of years. That's why I know there was a really good commercial entity. So that's another question that falls under the same category as Raukura Hauora, is that right?
So the Waikato Dance Performance Trust is registered with Charity Services. They, so all of their accounts are online as part of that, and I guess Drury Lane is their operating name.
Yeah.
Like lots of our not-for-profit sector, they have a service that they can sell, and so their service is the teaching young people to dance. And if you look at the annual accounts that get submitted on Charity Services, they are not making a lot of money. They are a very, within the scheme of Hamilton, they're a very small not-for-profit. And so, yes, they do sell a service, but it's by no means making people rich.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It just felt like it when you
Yes.
pay for all that stuff. The other question I've got, the second question I've got, is about the Citizens Advice Bureau. How much is that still used today? Because everything is online. There's 50,000 apps and everything. So how much? I mean, it's lovely that we have got. It's usually volunteers that man it, I think.
Yes, yeah.
And that's lovely to give them some work to do, and I have no problem with that. But in reality, how much use does it get today? Today's market?
Approximately 12,000 cases to people were dealt with by Citizens Advice last year.
Yeah.
A lot of that does occur via phones, but the people who enter the space are often a lot more of a complex situation, and so it does take it takes time to manage that. So they are still an incredibly well utilised community service.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you. I didn't know, so thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, thank you. I've a number of questions which I'll move over to the debate side, but a couple of questions. One is, the rent, is the rent agreed fixed for the whole term of the lease?
So within the community occupancy policy, there's a provision that each year each year we can undertake that market rental. So each of our buildings have a classification. So for instance, Enderley is classified as a ranking of 3, which means it's $50 per square metre, whereas the Frankton Railway Institute is classified as 4, so it's $35 per square metre. Right. Celebrating Age is 2, so it's $75 per square metre.
So do we do that each year? Do we go back to them and say it's gone up by 5% or whatever and increase the rental on a year-by-year basis?
No, it's a large piece of work to go through our entire portfolio, so it's been a couple of years since we last revisited that figure.
So practically how often do we do that?
I think it was 2 years ago that was last
Okay,
well,
so,
I could confirm,
so it's fair to assume that every 2 to 3 years we would do a review of all of the existing leases, and where appropriate we would increase the rental. Does that require a variation in the lease agreement, or is it just really a matter of informing the tenant that it's gone up by that amount and it'll start on such and such a date at that rate?
The second option. So there is, so a letter would happen. So as we transition from our old policy into the community occupancy policy, there was a step change, and so that was done on a letter system.
Okay.
Where there's change to footprint, that's where we come back to council to get recommendations for change.
And thank you. And my second question, which I was going to direct to someone from finance, or Richard, but he's not here now, but thanks very much for putting in what the 87.5% of the value of the rental is, and my calculation suggests that over the community leases, the annual value of that grant, or that subsidised portion, is just under $900,000. So my question to finance, or perhaps to Helen, to inform finance, is will there be an appropriate adjustment made in our annual financial accounts to record the market rate of rental and the value as a debit of the value of the grant? Because I think it's a significant amount that perhaps needs to be recorded alongside the other grants that council makes.
I'll need to talk to finance and.
Okay, can you come back to us on that, because it is something I've raised over a period of time, and
we might be able to get a quick response after the lunch break.
Okay, no, that'd be fine. Yep,
Any other questions?
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bunting.
Thank you. Look, I've just got a quick question, quite different to most of the other ones actually. With regards to Fairfield Park Hall, and I probably have asked this too late, but is there a possibility of getting them to manage more than just that and get them to manage the skate park next door as well? Because it's right there, and a lot of what goes on out there affects what goes on to the physical makeup of the hall. Is that something that could be considered?
In terms of, it depends on your definition of manage. So in the sense of council are responsible for the asset, the team at Te Whare o Te Ata are actively engaged in their neighbourhood, and so they have an invested interest in the behaviour and the activity that takes place at the skate park, but it is a public space, so it's not necessarily, I wouldn't be recommending a lease of the skate park which may exclude kids turning up to be able to skate. So they would manage some of the behaviour, The police are still an active member of the Fairfield Enderley community, and so they have physical presence in and around Whare o Te Ata and Fairfield Hall, so they also mitigate some of the behaviour that might spill out every now and then. But we've got some great community groups who are actively working with our young skaters and, you know, generating some really positive behaviour.
I'm just thinking, because I just wonder if it's a way we ought to look at these things, and that maybe we could formalise it a little tiny bit, because we've had such great examples, haven't we, of community, like for example the Dominion playground, where the community got involved and actually really sorted that problem out. And I wonder if that's, perhaps we could take some lead from that.
And I guess if we think physically, Western Community Centre is located next to one of our skate parks, and so they do have a line of sight, and they do generate activity, and they work with H-Town Skate, and they work with a number of other community providers. Te Whare o Te Ata are in a similar space, that is, they if they were to be successful in a lease of Fairfield Hall, they would be right there in a way that Western Community is. And they are close, being across the park, but it is slightly different being in an office a couple of hundred metres away versus being in an office right there.
So in your view, do you think, and probably Helen's as well, are we doing enough to encourage that that interaction? Because the last thing we'd want is for things to get icky and then to throw their hands in the air. So, well, actually it's councils anyway.
I think the ongoing how do we activate our public spaces is a great conversation that we're having with our partners all the time. Yep. And I think of the conversation that Council has had with H-Town Skate in recent times is a great example of a group of young people who are passionate about skateboarding, but passionate about this city. And activity is increased. I've got a couple of young boys who have just started skateboarding, and they go to classes with H-Town Skate, and they use all of our venues at a variety of times. So there is some of that really good positive engagement taking place.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bunting. Mayor King.
Just Siggy, Councillor Siggy, you referred to Drury Lane. Where do they operate from?
So the Waikato Dance Performance Trust has an operating name of Drury Lane.
Oh, I see.
Yep. So the trust is the Dance Performance Trust, but Drury Lane has been used for a lot more years than the trust has been in existence.
And there are other dance schools that are in private buildings that charge similar rates.
Well, like dancing rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're subsidising this company by 87.5%. So, really, we keep referring to it meets the criteria. So maybe the criteria, the policy needs looking at.
If Council would like to look at the community occupancy policy and the criteria and guidelines, then we can definitely do that as be reviewed. I guess we have gone through a public expression of interest process to get to today. So my recommendations have come in light of what the community has put forward as a possible use of our facilities. In this particular instance, we had two applications from Citizens Advice and from Waikato Dance Performance. They're the only two groups that put forward an EOI for Old St. Peter's Hall. And so my recommendation comes both from an eye to the criteria and the guidelines within the policy, but also this is the best use that was put before us as a council without us generating our own activity. So my recommendations come because this is the best, I believe this is the best use of our space from what has been presented by the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor King. Councillor McPherson, and then we will work on your motion over lunch.
Just a question again about what type of organisation would qualify as per the current policy. If a registered charitable trust with health or community visions in its trust deed approached us for the use of a community facility, would that be enough to qualify? I'm not saying they would be the best user, but would it be enough to qualify to be considered under the policy?
I can't give you a verbatim of what our definition of community in the policy is right now. I can find that out for you though. But essentially the essence of our policy does talk about that wider benefit. So we're not commercialised, we're not for profit. It is for the community has got the interest of the community at heart. It is intentionally a broad stroke when the policy was determined because of the incredible range of leaseholders that we have across our portfolio.
Because I noticed that Sanitarium is a registered charitable trust run by a religious organisation or family that has health and well-being motives written into its vision statement. I think we've got a couple of halls that they might usefully use in Hamilton. Would they qualify, Andy?
I guess back to my comment to Mayor King, this was a public expression of interest process, and my recommendations have come by looking at those that have put forward applications. If Sanitarium had put forward an application, it would have been evaluated according to our criteria and guidelines. That doesn't mean that we would recommend it, because it also looks at our particular framework or matrix of decision making was also looking at the number of community who would benefit from the use of their space. Also looking at the times
quite
used.
a lot of people would benefit from wheat bix.
And by the way, there are cereal applications.
Okay, so
sorry, Andy, that's the just.
So Sean, you've joined us here at the top. Are you
Just to answer your question with the exact wording, so the current definition of community used by council when considering targets organisations whose primary objective is to provide programs, services or activities that benefit the social, cultural, arts and environmental well-being of communities in Hamilton. They must be a registered legal entity and have charitable status as defined by the Charities Act 2005.
It doesn't mention health, though, in that list of attributes or aims.
Well-being.
It's, I guess, health can fit in, in terms of a lot of that. When we think about holistically our well-being and our health, they're not separated.
okay? So I think
Richie has 2 a day, wheat bix, that is. That's supposed to be healthy.
So
Sorry.
we're going to break in just a moment because I think we've had an hour and a half on this topic. Give the staff a chance to pick up, just negotiate with you that they got this exactly where you want it, Councillor McPherson, and then we will come back and we'll be able to put the recommendation up. Now, Gary, you're waving your hand. Do you have one further? No? Fine. Okay, so we're